Welcome back, brave seekers of the paranormal, to my channel A, where every creaking floorboard, flickering light, and cold draft tells a story, and some of those stories refuse to end. Tonight, we venture into Illinois' most haunted apartments, where shadows linger, spirits roam freely, and tragic events have left a permanent mark on the building's souls. These are just old apartments. They are the sites of accidents, murders, mysterious disappearances, and restless entities. Residents claim they've been touched by invisible hands, woken by ghostly whispers, and confronted by figures that vanish when approached. So, take a deep breath, clutch your blanket tightly, and join me as we explore. Because in these apartments, the dead never truly leave you. And sometimes, they are closer than you think. The Congress Plaza Hotel apartments in Chicago rise along Michigan Avenue, grand and dignified against the skyline. To the casual passerby, it appears like any other historic structure. Its ornate A-section ade and elegant windows, speaking of a bygone era. Yet those who have spent the night inside know better. The building holds an energy that cannot be ignored. From its creaking corridors to its cold, silent rooms, something unseen stirs beneath the surface, as though the walls themselves remember the countless souls who passed through them. For more than a century, whispers of tragedy and unexplained events have clung to the Congress like shadows at dusk. It was meant to be a beacon of luxury when it opened, a place for travelers, socialites, and statesmen to rest in style. But the glamour never fully hid the darker undercurrent that seeped into its foundation. Over the decades, stories of mysterious deaths, sudden disappearances, and unexplainable happenings spread from guest to guest, each tale adding another layer to the hotel's sinister reputation. Among all the strange tales that surround it, none is more unsettling than that of Room 441. Guests who have stayed there speak of a constant sense of being watched. The lights flicker without reason. Drawers open in the night. The bedsheets rustle as if an unseen hand is tugging at them. Some have reported waking up to find a shadowy figure standing at the foot of the bed, motionless, silent, and staring. The figure disappears the moment they scream or turn on the lights. According to the oldest accounts, the spirit is believed to be that of a man who met a violent and unexplained end within that very room many decades ago. No official record names him, yet his presence has never faded. Residents who live in the apartment section of the building say they can hear faint knocks echoing from the hallway late at night, followed by the slam of a door when no one is there. A few claim that if you stand near room 441 during a quiet hour, you might hear a whisper to the door, a deep, trembling voice murmuring warnings, as though trying to protect others from something unseen. Employees have tried to rationalize the occurrences, blaming old wiring or uneven floors. But even they avoid that hallway when the building grows still after midnight. One longtime housekeeper once confessed she never enters room 441 alone. She said she once heard the sound of footsteps circling her as she changed the linens, though she was certain she was the only one inside. The temperature dropped so suddenly that her breath became visible in the air, and a manna-esque whisper brushed against her ear. Beyond that infamous room, the rest of the hotel carries its own unease. Phantom cries echo faintly through the stairwells, drifting up from the lower levels. Some nights, the elevators move on their own, stopping at empty floors and opening their doors as if expecting someone to step inside. Guests have felt unseen hands brush against their shoulders, only to turn and find no one there. The air grows colder near certain rooms, as if time itself is frozen within their walls. Those who live in the apartment section say the haunting is not confined to any one area. They hear footsteps above their ceilings when no one occupies the rooms above. Radios turn on by themselves, softly playing music from another era of waltzes and jazz tunes from the early 20th century. Mirrors sometimes fog without reason, revealing faint shapes that vanish as quickly as they appear. One tenant swore that he saw a woman in an old-fashioned gown drifting through his living room, her gown soaked and torn, her expression blank and lost. When he blinked, she was gone, leaving only the faint scent of lilac and old perfume. The strangest thing about the Congress Plaza Hotel apartments is the way time feels distorted inside. Hours pass differently. Clocks stop and start without warning. Visitors often report vivid dreams of the pasta of lavish parties, uniformed soldiers, and sorrowful guests peering from balconies. Ida asks as if the building traps moments in time, replaying them endlessly, forcing echoes of the past to mingle with the living. Some historians suggest the hotel was built over older structures, including parts of the city once tied to the world of Columbian exposition. Others whisper that something darker has anchored itself here, a curse woven from decades of despair. Suicide, loss, and violence have left stains on the Bodinga's history. A mother, consumed by grief, is said to have thrown her children from a high floor before jumping herself. Each tragedy seems to strengthen the Bodinga's hold, feeding whatever restless energy lingers inside. Even skeptics find it hard to stay indifferent after a night within its walls. They come expecting urban legends, only to leave pale and shaken, claiming they felt something watching them as they slept. Paranormal investigators who have visited report temperature drops, electromagnetic spikes, and unexplained voices caught on tapia whispers too soft to understand, yet urgent enough to chill the spine. Locals say the hotel's lights sometimes flicker during thunderstorms, glowing faintly even when the power is out across the city. Some believe that on those nights, the restless spirit from room 441 walks the upper floors again, slamming doors and muttering warnings to anyone who dares to listen. Others think Ida as the building itself coming alive, feeding on the energy of storms, drawing from lightning the same way it draws from human fear. No matter the explanation, few OVs stayed within the Congress Plaza Hotel apartments ever forget the experience. Something about the place lingers with them long after they have gone, the scent of old dust and perfume, the echo of footsteps in an empty hallway, the faint whisper that comes when the lights dim low. Chicago has many ghosts, but none quite as persistent as the ones that haunt this old hotel. The Congress stands as both monument and mausoleum, an elegant facade hiding restless shadows, where tragedy has piled upon tragedy, and the line between the living and the dead has long since blurred. The Drake Apartments in Chicago stand proudly alongside the historic Drake Hotel, their grand architecture reflecting the elegance of another age. To outsiders, the building is a symbol of sophistication, its marble floors gleaming beneath chandeliers, its corridors echoing with the quiet hum of city life. Yet behind the polished surface, a chill runs deep. The walls remember what most would rather forget, and the air within seems to hum with the weight of the past. For decades, whispers have followed the Drake Apartments as stories of footsteps in empty corridors. Stories of whispers from behind locked doors and shadows that shift against the light. Visitors arrive expecting a quiet night in one of Chicago's most beautiful buildings. But many leave with a sense that something unseen has followed them home. The hauntings here are subtle, at first a faint coldness that lingers a little too long, or a door that creaks open slowly as if guided by invisible hands. But for those who stay long enough, the strangeness grows undeniable. Residents speak of mirrors that seem to breathe. They say that late at night, when the building is still, reflections move ever so slightly out of sync with reality. A figure may appear over a shoulder where no one stands, vanishing the instant one turns to look. Others have reported shapes gliding past their doorways, shadows darker than night that leave the faintest trace of perfumia and old, floral scent like something from the early 1900s. The most frequent apparition is known simply as the woman in white. Her legend is woven tightly into the fabric of the Drake itself. Some claim she is the spirit of a young woman who died tragically during the Bodinga's construction, while others say she was a guest from decades later, a heartbroken bride, who leapt from one of the upper floors after her fiancé copyright betrayed her on their wedding night. The details change from telling to telling, but the sightings remain the same. She is described as graceful and silent, her gown flowing as if caught in a phantom breeze, her face pale but peaceful. She is most often seen in the hallways that connect the hotel and apartment sections. Security guards have reported catching glimpses of her on their late-night rounds, only to find the corridors empty upon inspection. One maintenance worker swore he saw her glide into an elevator that was out of service, the doors closing on their own. When he pried them open moments later, the lift was dark and motionless. Cameras placed in those same areas have flickered with static, recording nothing but faint bursts of light that appear and vanish like sparks in the air. Many believe the haunting began long before the Drake opened its doors. During its construction in the early 1920s, several workers reportedly met untimely ENSA, accidents involving scaffolding, collapsing beams, and unexplained falls. Some say a section of the foundation was poured before one of the bodies could be recovered, sealing a restless soul beneath the floors. Whether the stories are true or exaggerated by time, the sense of unease among those who work within the building remains strong. Electricians, cleaners, and night staff often refuse to enter certain basements or storage areas alone, claiming the temperature drops to near freezing the moment they step inside. Even the guests who stay briefly in the apartments describe peculiar sensations. Some wake in the night to the sound of distant footsteps pacing the halls. Others hear soft knocking against the walls, rhythmic and deliberate, as though summonia or some fingers try to make contact. A few have reported the sound of faint crying, muffled and sorrowful, coming from behind closed doors. Yet when they call the front desk, no one else on that floor has been checked in for days. One of the strangest stories involves a mirror in one of the upper apartments, an ornate piece dating back to the hotel's earliest days. Tenants say the glass occasionally fogs over without cause, even when the air is warm. When it clears, a message, sometimes a person's short phrase, is written, as if traced by a fingertip. A still here, a donut forget. A no one has ever seen who or what writes them. Investigators who have studied the Drachia as paranormal activity claim that the energy within the building feels layered, as though different moments in time overlap. Recordings often capture faint voices, snippets of conversation that sound like they belong to another century. One such recording caught a woman's soft laughter, followed by the sound of shattering glass, though the hallway where it was taken was empty at the time. Temperature readings frequently plummet near the older stairwells, and motion sensors trigger without any visible cause. Despite the fear these stories inspire, there is an odd sense of melancholy to the hauntings. The spirits of the Drake apartments don't seem malevolent. Rather, they seem trapeta-bound by memory and loss. Some residents claim Theavi felt comfort rather than terror in their presence, as if the Bodinga-esque ghosts are simply wandering, searching for something familiar. A few long-time tenants have even left small offerings of flowers, candles, notices by the mirrors or in the corners of the halls. Small gestures meant to honor the restless souls that linger there. Yet the curse of the Drake apartments persists. Every attempt to renovate certain sections of the building seems to awaken new disturbances. Tools vanish, lights flicker, and construction crews report hearing voices whispering from behind the walls. Ida says if the spirits resist change, clinging to the building is the last trace of the lives they once knew. On stormy nights, when lightning flashes over Lake Michigan and rain batters the windows, some say the woman in white appears again, gliding through the dim corridors, her gown glowing faintly in the dark. Those who see her describe an overwhelming sense of sorrow, as though the air itself carries the echo of her grief. Then she fades, leaving only the chill of her passing behind. The Drake apartments remain a place of beauty and mysteria, a residence of luxury, haunted by its own history. Beneath the soft light of chandeliers and the quiet hum of the city outside, the past never truly sleeps. The echoes of the lost continue to drift through the halls, and those who listen closely might still hear them whispering, caught forever between this world and the next. The Rookery apartments in Chicago rise proudly from the heart of the city, their intricate design and timeless elegance a reminder of the architectural brilliance of the late 19th century. Yet behind the beauty lies a strange, unsettling atmosphere and energy that hums through the walls and seems to cling to the air itself. The building has always drawn admiration for its grandeur, but for those who live within it, there is an undeniable sense that something unseen watches from the shadows. The Rookery stands on land steeped in history, ground that has witnessed both triumph and tragedy. Before the apartments were built, the site endured the devastation of the Great Chicago Fire, and before that, it was part of the city's earliest settlements, places where hardship and loss were constant companions. Many say that energy never left. It lingers beneath the foundations, echoing through time, growing heavier with each life that passed through its doors. From the outside, the building gleams with an almost deceptive calm. Inside, the air feels different and cooler, denser, as if charged by something unseen. Residents speak of footsteps echoing along marble hallways long after everyone has gone to bed. They describe the sounds of movement above them when the floors above are empty, or whispers that float faintly through the vents, soft and indecipherable. Some nights, the elevator seems to move on its own, stopping on random floors and opening its doors to no one. One resident, a young artist who moved into the rookery to find inspiration, claimed that his brushes would shift across his studio table whenever he left the room. At first, he blamed drafts from the old windows or vibrations from the street below. But one night, he returned to find every brush standing upright in a perfect circle, the bristles quivering slightly as if just touched. He left the next morning and never came back for his belongings. Another tenant, an elderly woman who had lived in the building for over 20 years, often spoke of voices that echoed faintly from the stairwell. She said they were not threatening, only lost, murmuring names or fragments of conversation. She once heard a man-ass voice call out her name clearly, though she was certain she had not given it to anyone. When she followed the sound, the hallway grew freezing cold, her breath visible in the air, and a shadow passed across the wall in front of her, moving against the direction of the light. Even maintenance workers, who pride themselves on skepticism, avoid certain areas after dark. One of them reported that tools left neatly stacked in a corner of the basement would often be scattered by morning, or lined up in strange geometric patterns along the floor. Another swore that he saw a wrench rise from a shelf and drop suddenly, clattering to ground without anyone near it. He quit 2 days later, refusing to return for his paycheck. The building's connection to tragedy is not hard to trace. During its early construction, several workers lost their lives in accidents. Records from the time are sparse, but newspaper archives speak of scaffolding that collapsed unexpectedly, and a worker who vanished after falling into an unfinished elevator shaft. Some claim his body was never recovered, and that his spirit remains, pacing the corridors he never finished building. Locals who study the paranormal believe the rookery's design may actually amplify spiritual energy. The building's iron and brick structure, they say, acts like a conduit, trapping vibrations of the past within its walls. The ornate staircases and winding hallways create echoes, not only of sound but of memory, allowing the dead to walk the same paths endlessly. The result is a haunting that never fades, an endless loop of footsteps, whispers, and sudden chills. Those who have spent long nights within the rookery often speak of sudden temperature drops, the kind that sink deep into the bones. Followed by the faint scent of smoke and burning wood. He later learned his room was built over part of the original foundation that survived the Great Fire, where dozens once sought refuge as flames consumed the city. The smell of smoke, it seemed, was not of this time but a memory replaying itself in the air. Mirrors in the building are said to reflect things they shoot in a tea. More than one tenant has described seeing shapes standing behind Thema. Tall figures in old-fashioned work clothes, their faces blurred, their eyes hollow. Others have caught fleeting glimpses of man covered in dust and ash, his expression weary but determined, as if still laboring to finish a task left incomplete. When confronted directly, the image fades, leaving only the reflection of an empty room. Despite the unease, the rookery apartments remain in high demand. People are drawn to the building's beauty, to its connection with Chicago's history, and to the strange allure that surrounds it. Some even claim to feel comforted by its energy, as if the spirits that dwell within are guardians rather than threats. They speak of hearing faint humming in the night of old tunes from the early 1900s, say, or feeling a soft touch on the shoulder when walking alone, gentle enough to seem like a greeting. Still, there are nights when the building feels alive in a different way. When the wind howls through the streets and the lights flicker along the hallways. Shadows gather in the corners, and the faint sound of hammers and voices rises from the depth below. Some believe the workers are still there, continuing the construction that fate interrupted. Their tools strike rhythmically, their footsteps echo up the stairwells, and the walls seem to tremble ever so slightly, as if the building itself remembers their toil. For the residents who remain, life in a rookery is a delicate balance between beauty and fear. They live among echoes of the past, sharing their home with restless souls who never truly left. The building stands as a living monument to the cause of Progressa, a place where history, tragedy, and the supernatural intertwine. And on certain nights, when the air grows heavy and the city outside falls silent, the ghosts of the rookery rise once more, walk in the halls they helped build, their footsteps soft but endless, bound forever to the structure they created. Cabrini Green Apartments once stood as one of Chicago's most infamous landmarks, a sprawling complex of brick towers and row houses, built with hope but remembered for tragedy. In its early years, it was meant to represent progress, a chance for families to rise from poverty into stability. But over time, it became a symbol of neglect, fear, and sorrow. Today, even though much of it has been demolished, the land itself seems restless, as if the pain of those who once lived there is soaked into the soil and refuses to fade. Long after the last families moved out, strange things began to happen among the remaining structures and the empty lots. Security guards patrolling the area reported hearing faint cries echoing through the dark, though no one was there. The sound of children playing their soft laughter, the bounce of a ball drifted through the air, only to vanish when approached. On windy nights, doors would slam in vacant hallways, and the creak of footsteps would follow, even when every floor was deserted. Those who spent time near the old Cabrini Green grounds say that the place never truly fell silent. The most common reports describe shadowy figures moving within stairwells, silhouettes that dart just out of sight. Some witnesses swear they have seen people standing in the windows of demolished buildings, children staring blankly, their eyes hollow and dark. One maintenance worker claimed he saw a young girl in a faded dress on the 5th floor of one of the remaining towers. She was standing perfectly still, looking out toward the city lights. When he called out to her, she turned her head slowly, her face pale and blurred by shadow, and then disappeared before his eyes. He quit his job the next morning, refusing to set foot near Cabrini again. Those who once lived in the complex tell similar stories. They speak of voices whispering in the night, sometimes calling their names. In the older buildings, where the stairwells echoed endlessly, residents would hear footsteps following close behind theme of light, quick, like a child running, but when they turned, there was no one there. Some claimed that toys left on the floor would move overnight, rolling softly across the tile as if pushed by invisible hands. Doors opened and closed without reason. Lights flickered, and in the quietest moments, the air seemed to hum, carrying the weight of countless untold stories. For many, the spirits of Cabrini Green are believed to be the ghosts of those who died thereafter victims of violence, accidents, and despair. Over the decades, tragedy became a constant presence. Lives were cut short by poverty, by crime, and by the hopelessness that grew inside those crumbling walls. Children lost to stray bullets, families broken by fire, people vanished and were never found. The echoes of their lives remain, trapped within the structure's memory. Residents often spoke a heaviness that filled the air, a pressure that made it difficult to breathe, as if the building itself mourned alongside them. Paranormal investigators who visited the site in its final years documented cold spots in empty hallways, sudden bursts of static on their recorders, and the faint sound of weeping. One team claimed that a child's voice was captured on tape, whispering a single word a home a. Another recording caught the distant slam of a door, though every entrance had been sealed. Cameras malfunctioned without warning, batteries drained within minutes, and shadows appeared in photographs where no one stood. The more they explored, the clearer it became that Cabrini Green was not abandoned in spirit. even if it was in body. Locals who pass by the site today still feel uneasy. They say the temperature drops as soon as you approach where the towers once stood. Some see figures at night of children running across the open field, vanishing into thin air before reaching the streetlights. Others glimpse faces in the windows of nearby buildings, reflections that don't match any living person. On rainy evenings, when thunder rolls over the city, the wind seems to carry the faint echo of voices. Mothers calling their children home, laughter turning to screams, and the steady rhythm of footsteps pacing in circles. The legend of Cabrini Green as haunting has grown stronger over time. Some believe the spirits linger not out of malice, but from a longing for peace they never found. The complex was home to generations of families who endured hardship and loss, who dreamed of better lives within walls that offered little safety. Their emotions of love, fear, anger, and despair became imprinted upon the space itself. It is said that such intensity leaves behind an energy that cannot easily be erased, and that Cabrini Green-esque ground is now charged with that energy, replaying moments of its painful past. Former residents sometimes return to the area, standing quietly where their homes once stood. Many describe an overwhelming feeling of being watched and not with menace, but with familiarity. They say the place feels alive, aware, as if remembering them. Some even claim to hear faint voices calling from the empty lots, the laughter of children echoing between the nearby high-rises. A few have left flowers or toys on the ground, small offerings to the spirits they believe still wander there. To this day, few are willing to walk through the site alone after dark. Even construction crews working on redevelopment projects have reported strange occurrences. Tools going missing, sudden gusts of cold air, and lights flickering in temporary offices. One worker said he felt a hand grasp his shoulder. When he turned, no one was there, but a Childa-esque handprint appeared clearly in the dust on his jacket. Cabrini Green may no longer stand as it once did, but its ghosts remain. The echoes of its history linger in every gust of wind, in every shadow that crosses the empty land. The laughter, the cries, the pain of generations, none of it has truly gone. The spirits that roam those grounds are not vengeful, only lost, bound to the memories of the lives they once knew. They are the reflection of everything Cabrini Green came to represent: hope, struggle, and the deep, enduring sorrow of a community that was forgotten. And even as the city moves on, their presence endures, whispering reminders of the past to the night air, unwilling to be silenced. The Blackstone apartments in Chicago stand as a monument to timeless elegance. Their ornate stone FAA section ade and sweeping views of the city draw those who appreciate the charm of historic architecture. Yet, beneath the refined beauty of its hallways and chandeliers, there lies an unsettling presence. For decades, residents have whispered about strange occurrences of whispers that began with odd sounds and cold drafts, and grew into chilling tales of something far darker. The building was once celebrated as one of Chicago's most luxurious addresses. Its marble floors gleamed, its staircases curved with old-world grace, and its walls held the laughter of the city's elite. But time has a way of changing places, and the Blackstonia-esque grandeur eventually gave way to silence and secrets. Some say it began with a single tragedy, one that stained the building forever. In the late 1930s, a young woman named Eleanor lived alone in one of the upper-floor apartments. She was well known to the building staff for her kindness and quiet demeanor. According to records, she had moved to the city seeking a new life after the sudden death of her husband. But within months, neighbors began hearing arguments through the walls of angry voices, muffled sobs, and once a scream that cut to the night like a knife. The next morning, Eleanor was found dead in her apartment, her body lying near the mirror in the parlor. The police ruled a crime of passion, though her killer was never caught. After that, the atmosphere in the building began to change. Tenants reported hearing footsteps pacing the upper floors late at night, even when those apartments stood empty. The elevator would stop on her floor without being called. Doors opened on their own, and lights flickered as though responding to invisible hands. The air itself seemed to grow colder near her old apartment, the temperature dropping sharply even in the heat of summer. The most disturbing accounts came from those who lived near the apartment where the murder took place. Residents claimed they could hear the sound of a woman weeping faintly through the walls of soft, mournful sobs that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. Some said they had defined damp spots on the wallpaper afterward, as if tears had soaked through from the other side. The cry would stop as suddenly as it began, leaving only silence behind. Mirrors have always held a strange significance at the Blackstone. Many tenants have reported seeing fleeting shapes within theme of figures that do not belong, shadows that move when everything else stands still. A man once described shaving one morning when he noticed someone standing behind him in the reflection, a woman in an old-fashioned gown, her head tilted downward, her eyes dark and sorrowful. When he turned around, there was no one there. The moment he looked back, the mirror was fogged over, and in the condensation, a single word was written, A-Y-A. Even those who doubt the supernatural admit that the building carries a strange heaviness. Maintenance staff say that no matter how many times they repaint or renovate, the area around Eleanor's old apartment never feels right. The air seems thicker, and sounds carried differently, as though the walls themselves absorb them. When alone, workers have heard whispers behind theme of quiet, pleading, a woman's voice asking for help. Over the years, paranormal investigators have come to Blackstone in search of answers. Some bring advanced equipment. Others rely on intuition. Most leave unsettled. Temperature gauges drop inexplicably near the same apartment. Recordings capture faint sobs and electromagnetic sensors spike when placed near the mirrors. One investigator claimed to have seen the reflection of a woman standing in a corner of the room, her hands covering her face. When he turned, the corner was empty. Even the elevators seem affected. Residents have described being alone inside when the lights flicker and the car stops between floors. In that brief moment of darkness, they hear faint breathing beside them. One woman swore she felt a cold hand brush against hers before the lights came back on. The doors open on the top floor, and though she didn't press any button, the elevator seemed to wait its doors refusing to close until she whispered, I am sorry to The legend of Eleanor's death has become inseparable from the building's identity. Until they experience something they cannot explain. Until one night, he awoke to find his bedroom door slowly creaking open. When he turned on the lamp, the light flickered weakly and then went out. She looked directly at him before fading away into the darkness. No one knows why Eleanor's spirit remains. Some believe she cannot rest because her murder was never brought to justice. Others think her grief was so strong it imprinted itself onto the building, replaying endlessly like a record caught on the same note. Whatever the truth, her presence lingers, woven into the very air of the Blackstone. Even today, decades after her death, new residents still speak of the same strange phenomena. Objects move without reason. Lights dim and brighten. And in the quiet hours just before dawn, a faint sob can sometimes be heard drifting through the halls, as if carried on a breath of cold air. The Blackstone apartments remain as beautiful as ever, but their elegance hides a deeper sorrow. Those who have lived there long enough understand that beauty and darkness often coexist. Behind the mirrors and polished marble lies the echo of a woman's spine, a reminder that some tragedies never fade with time. And when the building grows still at night, her spirit stirs once more, walking the hallways. In silence, searching for peace. She has yet to find. The St. Clair apartments in Chicago rise modestly among the city's bustling streets. Their brick FAA sectionade and aged windows blending seamlessly with the surrounding architecture. But those who have lived or lingered long enough within its walls know there is something far from ordinary here. The air carries a subtle weight, a chill that creeps along hallways, an atmosphere that seems aware of every step taken within its corridors. The history of the St. Clair apartments stretches back nearly a century, though it was once a desirable residence. The most prominent being the mysterious death of a tenant in the 1940s. Details about this individual are scarce, but neighbors at the time spoke in hushed tones of a person who vanished suddenly, leaving behind personal belongings as though they had simply stepped out for a moment and never returned. Some say that Tanana's death was never properly investigated, and the uncertainty surrounding it left an imprint on the Bodinga, a lingering energy that refuses to dissipate. Visitors and residents alike have reported numerous strange occurrences over the years. Cold spots appear unpredictably, often in hallways or near certain apartments. One tenant described walking down a long corridor and feeling the temperature drop so suddenly that their breath became visible, even in midsummer. The sensation was not fleeting, it lingered, following them until they left the area. Others report hearing voices calling their names, sometimes softly, almost imperceptibly, and sometimes with a sense of urgency that makes the hair on the back of their neck stand on end. Many claim that these voices come from empty rooms, hallways, or stairwells, often accompanied by the inexplicable feeling that something or something is just behind them. Doors behave strangely within the St. Clair apartments. They swing open and close without warning, latching with force that suggests more than a breeze. Residents recount instances of entering their apartments to find doors ajar that they were certain had been locked. One long-term tenant recalled returning home late at night to find her front door wide open, despite having locked it herself. She stepped inside cautiously, and as she did, the door slammed shut behind her with a violent force. The experience left her shaken for days, a stark reminder that ordinary explanations rarely suffice here. Shadows are another common feature of the haunting. Tenants often see fleeting forms at the edges of their visiona, figures that disappear when approached. A man living on the third floor described noticing a silhouette gliding across his living room floor in the middle of the night. He turned on every light, called out, and even stepped outside. But the figure vanished completely, leaving no trace except a lingering sense of unease. Similar sightings have been reported in stairwells and along hallways, where shadows appear to drift against the flow of light, moving independently of any physical source. Many believe that these phenomena originate from the tenant who died in the 1940s. The suddenness of the death, combined with the lack of resolution, seems to have left a residual energy behind. Paranormal enthusiasts suggest that this energy has attached itself to the building, replaying echoes of a life cut short. It is as if the apartment itself remembers the final moments of that Tanana-esque existence, and those memories manifest in the strange occurrences that continue to disturb the living. Over the decades, the haunting has persisted, unaffected by renovations or changes in ownership. Attempts to modernize the building or improve its security often coincide with reports of heightened activity of lights flickering, doors slamming, and unexplained noises echoing through empty rooms. Tenants have occasionally spoken of hearing footsteps pacing late at night, even when every resident was accounted for elsewhere. Some claim to have felt cold, unseen hands brush against them as they walk down the hall, and objects left on tables or counters have been known to shift without explanation. Residents who have lived in the St. Clair for years often learn to coexist with the haunting, though it is never fully comfortable. Many leave lights on at night, keep doors bolted, or avoid certain areas of the building entirely. Some have attempted to capture phenomena on camera or audio devices, only to find that electronics behave strangely. Recorders produce static, lights flicker, and video footage captures fleeting blurs where no one stands. These experiences reinforce the idea that whatever lingers here is not bound by the rules of the physical world. Despite the fear and unease, there is also a quiet fascination surrounding the St. Clair apartments. Some tenants describe a sense of companionship with the unseen, a feeling that the building's ghostly presence is not malevolent but watchful. Stories circulate of residents feeling protected from danger in subtle ways, guided by the intangible force that occupies the building. Others leave small tokens, such as flowers or notes, in the hallways or near doors, gestures meant to acknowledge the presence they cannot fully explain. The St. Clair apartments stand today as both a home and a reminder of the mysteries that can linger long after life ends. The cold spots, The voices, the door that swing of their own accord, and the fleeting shadows are all traces of a past that refuses to vanish. The tenant who died in the 1940s may be gone in body, but their presence endures, woven into the fabric of the building. For those who live or visit here, the St. Clair is more than an apartment, it is a place where the ordinary and the unexplained coexist, a quiet monument to a life interrupted and the restless energy that remains. In the still of night, the hallways hold their secrets close, and the living navigate a space where shadows may follow, doors may slam, and whispers may call their names. The St. Clair Apartments, elegant and historic, are a home for Lavinga, but also a dwelling for the echoes of a past that has never truly left. The Albion Apartments in Chicago stand as an elegant reminder of the city's architectural past, their brick and stone FAA section Ade, conveying a sense of permanence and history. To the casual observer, it appears as any other historic apartment building, with polished floors, wrought iron railings, and tall windows that frame the city skyline. But for those who live in Sitio or linger in its hallways after darka, the Albion is far from ordinary. Over the years, countless reports of strange and unsettling occurrences have given the building a reputation that draws both fascination and fear. From the earliest days of its construction, there have been whispers of misfortune surrounding the Albion. Some speculate that the land itself holds a residual energy, charged with the lives and events of the decades. Residents frequently describe doors locking and unlocking on their own, often in the dead of night. One long-term tenant recounted returning to her apartment after a brief outing, only to find her front door bolted shut despite never having touched the lock. She felt a chill crawl along her spine and heard faint footsteps in the hallway outside, footsteps that slowed and stopped as if someone had noticed her presence. Stairwells in the Albion seemed to carry their own strange resonance. Ghostly footsteps echo up and down them, sometimes in rhythm with an imagined companion, sometimes in solitary cadence. Residents report hearing these sounds when no one else is home, and when they investigate, they find no Thinga, just the empty halls and the lingering sense that someone invisible is observing. On several occasions, tenants have described hearing whispers and murmurs in the stairwells, soft enough to be almost mistaken for the wind, yet unmistakably human in cadence and tone. The lighting in the Albion adds another layer of unease. Hallway lights flicker without cause, plunging entire floors into brief moments of shadow before returning to brightness. In some cases, the flickering seems almost purposeful, as if guiding summonia or warning them. One resident described seeing a hallway flicker rapidly while walking to her apartment, revealing a dark figure at the end of the corridor. By the time she reached the spot, the figure was gone, leaving only the residual cold that seemed to radiate from its absence. Perhaps the most famous specter associated with the Albion Apartments is that of the man in the top hat. Over the years, multiple tenants have reported seeing him pacing silently through the hallways, always dressed in formal, old-fashioned attire. His appearance is brief and fleeting, often visible only in the corner of the eye. When directly confronted, he vanishes without a trace. Some say he is a former resident, a gentleman from the Bodinga, as early days, who met a tragic end and now wanders the halls, bound to the structure he once called home. Others believe he is a guardian of sorts, patrolling the corridors in an eternal, silent watch. In addition to the man in the top hat, there are countless other sightings of shadows and figures moving in unexpected ways. Residents report fleeting glimpses of shapes drifting past windows, doorways, and mirrors, always vanishing when approached. Residents are left to wonder if the sightings are mere tricks of the mind or something more sinister. Some describe objects moving without explanation, books sliding from shelves, chairs nudged slightly out of place, or personal items shifting overnight. The sensation is often accompanied by a heavy atmosphere, a quiet pressure that suggests unseen eyes following every movement. Many tenants have also spoken of auditory phenomena beyond footsteps and whispers. Doors slammed shut unexpectedly, often with a force that startles anyone nearby. Some have reported hearing piano music, drifting through empty apartments. Soft and melancholic, though no instrument is present. Occasionally, a low hum or faint singing drifts through the corridors at night, a sound that seemed to echo from another era entirely. These auditory experiences often leave residents unsettled, unable to determine whether they are hearing echoes of the past or something else entirely. Paranormal investigators have long been drawn to the Albion apartments, documenting cold spots, electromagnetic anomalies, and unexplained movement. Cameras and recording devices sometimes capture strange shadows, fleeting figures, or lights behaving irregularly. Temperature readings often drop suddenly in specific areas, especially near the stairwells and old hallways. One investigator described feeling a sudden, heavy pressure on his chest while walking a corridor, accompanied by the sensation that someone was pacing just behind him. When he turned, he found no one. Despite the unsettling activity, life continues within the Albion apartments. Residents learn to coexist with the Buildinga-esque quirks, whether by leaving lights on, locking doors carefully, or simply respecting the presence that seems to linger in every hallway. Some describe a sense of strange companionship with the building, a feeling that while the spirits may be restless, they are not malevolent or merely bound to the Albion in ways the living cannot fully comprehend. Others leave small tokens or notes as a gesture of acknowledgement, hoping to appease whatever unseen tenants walk the halls after dark. The Albion apartments are a place where history and the supernatural intertwine. The echo of footsteps in empty corridors, doors that lock by themselves, the flickering of lights, and the brief, silent presence of the man in the top hat all speak to a building that remembers far more than it should. Each resident, whether skeptical or accepting, comes to understand that life in the Albion is never entirely ordinary. The walls carry stories and the shadows tell secrets, lingering as silent witnesses to the passage of time. For those who have spent a night in its hallways, the Albion is more than an apartment building. It is a living memory, a place where the past refuses to stay buried, and where unseen presences walk the corridors in quiet rhythm with the living. The charm and elegance of the building cannot mask the strange energy that hums beneath its surface, a constant reminder that some histories and some spirits never truly fade. The Monadnock Apartments in Chicago occupy a striking place in the city's history. Part of one of the oldest and most architecturally significant buildings downtown, the structure is admired for its towering brick FAA Section A narrow windows and sheer presence along the streets. Yet behind its historic charm lies a reputation that draws curiosity and unease in equal measure. For decades, residents and visitors have reported inexplicable occurrences, leading many to believe that the building is haunted, its halls echoing with the memories of lives lost long ago. From the moment one enters the Monadnock Apartments, there is a subtle sense that the air is different. Tenants describe cold drafts that appear in hallways and rooms for no apparent reason. Lights sometimes flicker inexplicably, casting brief shadows that seem to linger just a fraction longer than they should. The sound of whispers is a common report of soft, hushed murmurs that carry through empty corridors, often calling names or repeating phrases that vanish when approached. Many say it feels as though the building itself is alive, aware of every movement, and watching those who pass through its halls. The haunting of the Monadnock is often traced back to the Buildinga's early construction days. Historical records reveal that multiple workers died in accidents while the structure was being erected. Some fell from scaffolding, others were caught beneath shifting materials, and a few vanished mysteriously during night shifts when no one was present to witness their fate. It is believed that the spirits of these workers never left, bound to the building by the suddenness of their deaths and the unfinished work that was left behind. Residents report feeling their presence most strongly in areas near stairwells, hallways, and rooms that once served as construction offices. Several tenants have shared chilling personal experiences. One resident recounted waking in the middle of the night to the sensation of someone standing at the foot of her bed. The air felt icy, and she could sense a presence, though no figure was visible. She froze, unable to move, until the feeling gradually dissipated, leaving her shaken. Another tenant described hearing footsteps pacing outside his apartment late at night. When he opened his door, the hallway was empty, yet the sound continued, echoing faintly down the corridor, as though the invisible visitor had moved further along. Whispers are another recurring phenomenon. Residents claim to hear soft conversations coming from empty rooms, often indistinct but urgent, like voices replaying a moment from the past. Some have reported hearing their own names called, a low and insistent tone that seems to come from just beyond reach. One woman described entering the Buildinga's stairwell and hearing muffled shouting, followed by the sudden silence of the empty air, leaving her with the overwhelming feeling that something or something had been standing very close to her. Shadows are a frequent sight. Tenants often glimpse fleeting figures near doorways or along the edges of their vision, only for them to vanish when looked at directly. A man who lived on the top floor reported seeing a dark shape linger outside his bedroom door for several minutes one evening. Though it never moved, he could feel the pressure of its attention, as if the presence were studying him. When he stepped closer, the figure disappeared completely, leaving only the chill of its passage. Even the common areas of the Monadnock apartments seem affected. Stairwells, often described as echoing and narrow, amplify the sound of phantom footsteps, making them seem closer than they actually are. Hallway lights sometimes flicker simultaneously, plunging floors into brief darkness before returning to illumination. Objects occasionally move without explanation, books or papers shifting on shelves, or personal items subtly displaced. Many residents accept these anomalies as part of living within a building that harbors unseen watchers. Paranormal investigators who have visited the Monadnock report unusual energy readings. Electromagnetic fluctuations are frequent near stairwells and certain hallways. Temperature drops occur suddenly, often localized to one area of a room. Recordings occasionally capture faint whispers or soft knocking noises, even when the building is otherwise empty. Video footage sometimes shows vague shapes, almost transparent, moving against walls or disappearing through doorways. Though unprovable, these signs seem to reinforce the stories tenants have told for decades. Despite the eerie phenomena, life in the Monadnock apartments continues. Tenants adapt, leaving lights on at night, keeping doors locked, or avoiding certain areas after dark. Some leave small tokens of flowers, notes, or trinkets as gestures of respect for the lingering spirits. Others report feeling a sense of companionship with the unseen, as if the presence of these long-departed workers serves as a reminder of the Buildinga's history rather than a threat. There is an odd comfort in knowing that these spirits are not malicious, merely tethered to the site where their lives ended. As if the presence of these long-departed workers serves as a reminder of the Buildinga's history rather than a threat. The Monadnock apartments represent more than just a residential space. They are a repository of history, memory, and the echoes of lives interrupted. The cold drafts, the whispers, the footsteps, and the fleeting shadows are manifestations of the Buildinga's long and sometimes tragic past. Residents live alongside the phenomena, navigating a world where the past is never truly gone, and where the spirits of those who perished during construction continue to leave their mark. Even today, late at night, when the city's noise fades, the Monadnock hums with a presence just beyond the veil of perception. Whispers drift through the hallways, shadows linger near doorways, and cold drafts brush past unsuspecting residents. It is a place where the living and the departed share the same space, bound together by history, tragedy, and the enduring energy of a building that has seen more than most could imagine. Those who enter the Monadnock apartments quickly learn that the ordinary rules of life do not fully apply here, and that the unseen is never far away. The Palmer House apartments in Chicago occupy a storied corner of the city's history. Part of the famous Palmer House complex, the building exudes elegance and nostalgia. Its ornate FAA Section 8s and grand interior space is a testament to early 20th century opulence. Visitors often marvel at the architecture, the high ceilings, and the intricate detailing. But for those who live within the apartments, the experience is far more than aesthetic. The Palmer House carries a reputation that few can ignore, a lingering presence that some describe as spectral, a weight of history that is palpable in its hallways and rooms. Reports of strange occurrences in the Palmer House apartments have persisted for decades. Residents describe hearing voices when no one else is present, whispers that seem to drift through corridors and apartments alike. The voices are often soft at first, almost imperceptible, but grow louder and more distinct in the quiet of the night. Some tenants have reported hearing conversations in languages they do not understand, or fragments of phrases that sound like urgent messages. On occasion, these voices call out names, seemingly aware of who occupies the apartment at that moment. Doors in the Palmer House apartments behave in ways that defy explanation. One long-time tenant recalled returning home late at night to find her apartment door ajar, though she had locked it herself. The moment she stepped inside, the door slammed shut behind her with a resounding bang, leaving her shaken. Another resident reported doors closing in sequence down an empty hallway, as if someone invisible were walking past each one. These incidents are common enough that tenants often accept them as part of life within the building, yet they remain deeply unsettling. Many of the apartments' hauntings are visual. Figures dressed in early 20th century attire have been spotted in hallways, appearing briefly and vanishing before anyone can approach. Some tenants describe seeing men in suits and top hats pacing slowly through the corridors, their presence quiet but authoritative. Women in long dresses have been glimpsed gliding along stairwells, their faces expressionless, their movements smooth and deliberate. These apparitions seem tied to Bildinga's past, echoes of residents who once walked these halls when the Palmer House was a hub of social and cultural activity. The haunting extends into private spaces as well. Several tenants have reported feeling the presence of a spirit in their bedrooms at night. One woman described waking suddenly to the sensation of hands brushing against her shoulders, her body frozen with fear. Another tenant felt a cold touch on his arm as he slept, accompanied by the faint scent of perfume lingering in the room afterward. While the experiences are terrifying, those who encounter them often describe the spirits as nonviolent, almost hesitant, as if their presence is meant to be acknowledged rather than feared. Stairwells and hallways carry their own peculiar energy. Many tenants report hearing footsteps pacing along the corridors, even when all apartments are empty. Sometimes, the footsteps follow a pattern, walking from one end of the hall to the other, then returning, as if tracing a path from decades past. Others describe hearing the faint sound of laughter or soft music drifting down the halls, echoes of the Bildinga's earlier social gatherings and balls. These sounds often vanish as abruptly as they appear, leaving only a residual sense of unease. Paranormal investigators have been drawn to the Palmer House apartments, documenting unusual occurrences and capturing evidence that defies simple explanation. Electromagnetic sensors spike in hallways and stairwells, while temperature readings drop suddenly near certain apartments, creating localized cold spots. Cameras sometimes capture brief shadows or transparent figures moving through corridors. Audio recordings often contain faint whispers, footsteps, or the low hum of music from another era. The investigators' findings corroborate the reports from residents, reinforcing the Bildinga's reputation as a site of ongoing paranormal activity. Despite the haunting, the Palmer House apartments remain highly sought after. The Bildinga's history, architecture, and central location attract tenants who are willing to coexist with the unexplained. Many learn to live alongside the spirits, leaving lights on at night, keeping doors secured, or simply acknowledging the presence they cannot see. Some leave small offerings, a note, a flower, a personal objective, near stairwells or in hallways. Others report feeling comforted by the presence, sensing that these entities are not malevolent, but are simply echoes of the Bildinga's rich history. The voices, the slamming doors, the figures in early 20th century attire, and the ghostly touches all speak to a building that remembers its history in ways the living cannot fully comprehend. Residents learn quickly that life within these walls is not entirely ordinary, and that the energy of decades past lingers in every hallway, room, and stairwell. Even in the quietest hours, when the city outside sleeps, the The Palmer house hums with a presence just beyond perception. Whispers echo from empty rooms, doors slam without reason, and shadowy figures pace silently along the corridors. Those who live here understand that the building is more than brick and mortar. It is a living monument to the past, a place where history, memory, and the supernatural coexist. The Palmer House apartments are beautiful, elegant, and timeless, but they are also haunted, carrying the lingering presence of countless lives that continue to walk its halls in the quiet of the night. The Chicago Avenue apartments, nestled in the heart of Lincoln Park, Chicago, are known for their prime location, historic charm, and unusual reputation. At first glance, the building appears like any other classic city apartment complex, with brick FAA section aids, wrought iron railings, and wide windows overlooking the bustling streets below. Yet, those who have lived within its walls know there is more than meets the eye. Over the years, countless tenants have reported strange occurrences of phenomena that cannot be explained by ordinary means, leaving many to believe the apartments are haunted. Residents frequently describe shadowy figures appearing at the edges of their vision. These forms are rarely fully visible, often retreating into corners or slipping silently through hallways when noticed. One tenant recalled entering his living room late one night to find a dark shape standing by the window, its outline tall and indistinct. When he blinked, it vanished entirely, leaving only a lingering chill in the air. Another tenant described seeing a shadow pacing slowly along the hallway outside her bedroom door, only to disappear as soon as she stepped forward to confront it. These encounters are often fleeting, yet they leave an undeniable sense of unease. Phantom footsteps are a recurring phenomenon in the Chicago Avenue apartments. Tenants report hearing slow, deliberate steps echoing through empty hallways or across apartments while they lie awake in bed. Sometimes the sound appears to follow them, pacing their movements from room to room, only to fade when approached. One resident described lying in bed, listening to footsteps outside her bedroom, counting each step until they stopped abruptly. Moments later, she heard the soft creak of her apartment door, swinging shut on its own. Such experiences are common, with many residents describing the sensation that something or something is always present, silently observing. Whispers are another frequent occurrence. Many tenants report hearing soft, unintelligible voices drifting through their apartments or hallways. At times, these whispers seem to call their names or repeat fragments of conversation. Some say the voices carry a sense of urgency, as though attempting to convey a warning or message, while others are faint, almost like echoes from the bodega past. One long-term resident recalled hearing a steady stream of whispers one night, soft and rapid, as if a group of unseen people were communicating just beyond the walls. When he investigated, every room was empty, leaving only the eerie sound of air moving through the building. In addition to auditory phenomena, objects in Chicago Avenue apartments often behave inexplicably. Tenants have reported books falling from shelves, chairs nudged slightly out of place, and personal items shifting overnight. One tenant awoke to find her jewelry scattered across the floor, though it had been neatly arranged on her dresser before she went to sleep. Another described his keys moving across the countertop, without explanation. These disturbances often occur at night, coinciding with other phenomena such as flickering lights, cold drafts, or the soft sounds of footsteps, suggesting a presence that interacts with the physical space. The source of the haunting remains a mystery. Some theorize that it stems from the bodega's long history and the lives of past residents. Lincoln Park has seen decades of growth and change, and buildings like the Chicago Avenue apartments have witnessed countless personal tragedies, moments of joy, and the everyday comings and goings of city life. Others believe the presence is more specific, tied to a particular event or individual whose energy has remained trapped within the structure. Regardless of the cause, tenants universally describe a lingering sensation, as if the building itself remembers and responds to those within it. Despite the unsettling experiences, life continues in the apartments. Residents learn to navigate the odd occurrences, often leaving lights on at night, avoiding certain hallways, or adapting to sounds and movements that defy explanation. Some take comfort in the presence, believing the shadows and whispers are harmless or even protective. Others leave small tokens of flowers, trinkets, or notices near doorways or in hallways, gestures intended to acknowledge the unseen inhabitants. These rituals, whether conscious or not, seem to foster a tenuous coexistence between the living and the spirits that linger. Paranormal investigators have visited the Chicago Avenue apartments over the years, documenting cold spots, sudden temperature drops, and anomalies on audio recordings. Cameras have captured fleeting shadows, and some investigators have reported feeling a presence in otherwise empty apartments. Many describe a sensation of being watched, a weight or pressure that follows them as they move through the building. While skeptics attribute much of this to the imagination or old building quirks, the consistency and volume of reports over decades have cemented the Buildinga's reputation as a site of active paranormal activity. The Buildinga's reputation as a site of active paranormal activity. For those who live or visit here, the Chicago Avenue apartments. The shadowy figures, phantom footsteps, whispers, and moving objects all contribute to a persistent feeling that the building holds memories of some joyful, some tragic, and some far more unsettling. It is a space where the past is never fully gone, and where, even in the quietest hours of the night, when the city streets are empty and the city hum fades, the apartments retain their strange presence. Cold drafts trace the hallways, shadows shift in corners, and soft whispers echo through empty rooms. Residents who have spent long nights within the building often report a heightened awareness of these phenomena, a sense that the unseen world is never far away. The Chicago Avenue apartments are more than just a residence. They are a living testament to the lingering spirits of Lincoln Park, a place where the history of those who came before continues to make itself felt in the quiet, restless moments of the night. The Astor Apartments in Chicago stand as an imposing landmark, their brick and stone FAA Section Odd a testament to the city's early 20th century architecture. On the surface, the building is elegant and unassuming, offering a mix of historic charm and modern convenience. Yet, for those who have spent time within its walls, the Astor is far from ordinary. Over the decades, countless tenants and visitors have reported strange and unsettling occurrences, cementing its reputation as one of Chicago's most haunted buildings. From the earliest days, reports of paranormal activity have circulated among residents. The most common phenomenon is the sound of a woman's wailing, a mournful cry that drifts through the hallways, often in the quiet hours of the night. Some say it rises from deep within the walls themselves, echoing in empty corridors and apartment rooms. One tenant recalled lying awake in bed when she heard the distinct sound of sobbing coming from the hallway outside her door. She opened it to find the corridor empty, the air cold and heavy. Yet the sound persisted for several minutes before fading away into silence. Others have described hearing fragmented words interwoven with the cries, almost as if the spirit were trying to communicate something left unresolved. Cold spots are another frequent occurrence. Certain rooms or corners of the building seem to drop sharply in temperature for no apparent reason. These icy pockets appear suddenly and often dissipate just as quickly. Tenants have reported feeling chills that travel across their bodies, accompanied by a sense of being watched. Some believe these cold spots are tied to the emotional intensity of the unresolved murder connected to the Buildinga's past. Others feel that they mark the presence of spirits, unable to move on and still tethered to the place where their lives ended. Objects behaving strangely is another hallmark of the Astor Apartments. Tenants have seen books sliding from shelves, chairs nudged slightly out of place, and personal items shifting overnight. Some have even reported objects levitating briefly before falling back to the floor. One tenant described seeing a small vase float inches above the table, spinning slowly in midair before dropping with a soft crash. These incidents are often accompanied by the wailing or footsteps in the hallway, creating a sense that the building itself is alive with unseen activity. Perhaps the most unsettling reports involve ghostly apparitions pacing the hallways. Residents have described seeing faint outlines of figures dressed in early 20th century attire, moving deliberately along corridors before vanishing into walls or fading into thin air. One tenant recounted seeing a man in a dark suit and hat walking slowly toward her door. When she tried to follow, he disappeared at the end of the hallway, leaving only the echo of his footsteps. Others have witnessed women in long dresses gliding silently down stairwells, their faces expressionless yet filled with a quiet sorrow. These sightings, though brief, leave a lasting impression, and many residents have shared a common feeling of unease and curiosity about the identities of these spirits. The haunting of the Astor Apartments is widely believed to be connected to a violent and unresolved murder that took place during the Bildinga's early years. Historical records suggest that a tenant was killed under mysterious circumstances, and the perpetrator was never apprehended. Some believe that the spirit of the murdered individual remains trapped within the building, replaying moments of the tragedy for anyone sensitive enough to witness them. The intensity of the wailing and the appearance of cold spots in certain areas are often interpreted as manifestations of this unresolved event. Paranormal enthusiasts speculate that the strong emotional imprint left behind has anchored the spirit to the apartments, resulting in the ongoing disturbances experienced by residents. Tenants also report a combination of auditory and visual phenomena that reinforce the building's haunted reputation. Footsteps can be heard pacing the floors when no one else is present. Doors open and close on their own, and furniture sometimes moves slightly as if nudged by an unseen hand. Lights flicker without explanation, and shadows appear at the edges of vision. Some describe fleeting glimpses of figures standing at the end of corridors or outside apartment doors, only to vanish when approached. These phenomena, though frightening, are rarely violent. Most residents describe them as ghostly echoes of past lives, lingering memories seeking recognition rather than malevolence. Paranormal investigators have frequently visited the Astor Apartments, documenting cold spots, electromagnetic anomalies, and inexplicable sounds. Audio recordings occasionally capture fragments of whispers or distant wailing, while video footage sometimes reveals faint shapes moving through hallways. Temperature readings often plummet in certain areas, sometimes in synchronization with the appearance of apparitions or the sound of footsteps. Investigators consistently report a pervasive feeling of being watched, an invisible presence that seems aware of their movements. These findings lend credibility to the stories shared by residents, reinforcing the belief that the building is more than just old walls and historic charm. Despite the eerie activity, life continues in the Astor Apartments. Residents adapt to the Bildinga's peculiarities, leaving lights on at night, keeping doors locked, and learning to coexist with the unexplained. Some leave small offerings, a note, a flower, or a personal item. A note, a flower, or a personal item in hallways or near doorways. Gestures meant to acknowledge the lingering spirits. Others simply accept the presence, finding a strange sense of companionship in the knowledge that the past is still alive within the walls. The Astor Apartments are more than a place to live. They are a living reminder of Chicago's layered history. The wailing, the cold spots, the levitating objects, and the pacing apparitions all speak to a building that has absorbed the pain, fear, and unresolved events of its past. Residents live alongside echoes of tragedy, moving through spaces where the line between the living and the spectral is thin. Even in the quietest hours of the night, the Astor hums with Lithia or unlithia, its corridors filled with whispers, shadows, and the indelible presence of a past that refuses to be forgotten. The Parkway Apartments in Chicago stand quietly along one of the city's tree-lined streets, a building of brick and stone that blends seamlessly with the historic neighborhood surrounding it. To the casual observer, it is an ordinary apartment complex with well-maintained hallways, wide windows, and balconies that offer sweeping views of the city. Yet for those who live within its walls, the Parkway Apartments are anything but ordinary. Over decades, tenants have reported a range of strange and unsettling phenomena, from whispering voices to shadowy figures, making it one of Lincoln Park's most infamous haunted locations. Residents often speak first of the sounds. Doors slam without warning, sometimes in the middle of the night, startling even those who have grown accustomed to the Bildinga's quirks. One tenant recalled returning home after a late shift to find her apartment door wide open, though she was certain she had locked it. As she stepped inside, the door slammed shut with a force that reverberated down the hallway. Another resident, lying awake in bed, reported hearing a series of rapid knocks on the walls, as though summonia or something was trying to get attention. But when she investigated, the hallways were empty. These experiences are common, yet each one leaves a lingering unease, a sense that the building is alive in ways that cannot be explained. Objects in the Parkway apartments also seem to act on their own accord. Tenants have reported items falling from shelves, books sliding across tables, and personal belongings shifting from one spot to another overnight. One resident described waking to find her coffee mug lying shattered on the floor, even though it had been carefully placed on the counter before bed. Another claimed that his keys had disappeared from the kitchen and reappeared on the hallway table hours later. These unexplained movements are often accompanied by the sounds of whispering or footsteps, further reinforcing the feeling that unseen presences are moving within the building. Whispers are a particularly chilling feature of the Parkway apartments. Tenants report hearing soft voices echoing through empty corridors, sometimes indistinct and other times clear enough to make out fragments of conversation. A long-term resident described hearing a woman calling her name from a hallway late at night, only to find the corridor completely empty when she stepped out to investigate. Others have reported hearing laughter, murmurs, or repeated phrases that seem to originate from rooms where no one is present. The whispers often carry a sense of urgency, as though the voices are trying to communicate something vital that remains beyond comprehension. Shadowy figures are another phenomenon reported by residents. These shapes are rarely fully visible, often seen as dark outlines or blurred forms at the edge of ONES vision. Many tenants have described seeing them standing silently in their bedrooms, watching from corners or near the doorway. One tenant recounted lying awake in bed to see a shadowy figure pacing slowly along the wall, its movements deliberate and calm, yet its presence unsettling. When approached, the figure vanishes, leaving only a lingering chill and the impression of being observed. Others report fleeting glimpses of figures drifting down hallways or appearing outside windows, only to disappear when directly looked at. Local legend ties much of the haunting to a tenant who died tragically in the 1920s. Historical accounts suggest that the individual met an untimely end under mysterious circumstances, leaving a lingering energy within the building. Some believe that this tragic event cursed the Parkway apartments, binding the spirit to its halls and influencing the strange occurrences experienced by residents ever since. Whether the tenant's death was accidental or the result of foul play, the intensity of the energy left behind is evident in the cold drafts, unexplained sounds, and fleeting apparitions reported to this day. Paranormal investigators have visited the Parkway apartments, documenting unusual readings and occurrences that correspond with tenant reports. Sudden drops in temperature often coincide with the appearance of shadows or the movement of objects. Audio recordings sometimes capture faint whispers, footsteps, or other unexplainable noises. Cameras occasionally detect subtle movements or blurs along hallways and stairwells, further suggesting the presence of a force beyond the physical. Investigators frequently report the sensation of being watched, a pressure or weight in certain rooms that disappears when they move away. These findings lend weight to the numerous resident testimonies and reinforce the Buildingda's reputation as a site of active paranormal activity. Despite the unsettling phenomena, life continues in the Parkway apartments. Residents learn to adapt, leaving lights on at night, keeping doors carefully locked, and avoiding certain areas after dark. Some place small tokens, such as flowers or notes, in hallways or near doorways, gestures meant to acknowledge the lingering spirits. Others take comfort in the presence, interpreting the activity as a reminder of the Buildingda's long history rather than a threat. Tenants often report a mix of fear and fascination, an awareness that they coexist with forces from the past that cannot be fully understood. The Parkway apartments are more than a simple residencia. They are a building that carries the echoes of tragedy, memory, and lingering energy. Doors slam, objects move, shadows appear, and whispers echo through empty corridors, all evidence of a presence that refuses to remain unseen. Even in the quietest hours of night, the apartments hum with life from beyond. A reminder that some histories do not fade and that the past can linger in unexpected and unsettling ways. Residents learn to live with the unusual, navigating a space where the ordinary and the supernatural coexist, and where the spirit of the past is never truly gone. The Belden Place apartments in Chicago sit quietly along a narrow, historic street, their brick FAA section odd and ornate detailing giving the building a sense of old-world elegance. To passers-by, the apartment appeared to be just another relic of the city's rich architectural past, offering classic charm and residential convenience. Yet, for those who live or linger within its walls, the building is far from ordinary. Over the decades, the Belden Place apartments have developed a reputation for strange and unsettling occurrences, earning a place among Chicago's most haunted residences. From the earliest reports, tenants have described hearing cries echoing through the empty hallways. These sounds often come without warning, rising suddenly in pitch and intensity before fading just as abruptly. One resident recalled lying awake late at night when a series of heart-wrenching cries filled the corridor outside her apartment. She stepped into the hallway to investigate, only to find it empty, the echoes lingering as if the building itself mourned some unseen tragedy. Others have reported hearing indistinct voices, whispering just beyond comprehension, calling names or speaking in fragmented sentences. The persistent whispers create a constant sense that the unseen is listening, observing, and perhaps trying to communicate. Footsteps are another frequent phenomenon in the Belden Place apartments. Tenants report hearing slow, deliberate pacing along the hallways, often at times when no one else is in the building. The sound of shoes against the floor echoes unervingly, and sometimes seems to follow residents from room to room. One long-term tenant described hearing footsteps climb the stairs outside her apartment in the dead of night, only to stop abruptly as she reached her door. When she opened it, the hall was empty, yet the sound had left a lasting impression, a lingering feeling of being watched. The building itself seems to manipulate the physical environment in inexplicable ways. Doors open and close on their own, often without a hint of wind or external interference. Objects fall from shelves, personal belongings shift overnight, and lights flicker without cause. One resident recounted waking to find her apartment door swinging wide open, though she had locked it before bed. Her belongings were scattered across the floor, yet there was no sign of forced entry. Another tenant reported feeling a cold breeze sweep through his apartment, accompanied by the faint sound of something sliding across the wooden floors. These occurrences create an atmosphere of uncertainty, leaving residents unsure what is real and what is spectral. Sudden drops in temperature are a common experience within the Belden Place apartments. Certain rooms or hallways chill inexplicably, often coinciding with other phenomena, such as whispers, footsteps, or the movement of objects. Tenants have described walking into a room and feeling the air turn icy in an instant, the cold seeping through clothing and skin. Some believe these temperature drops mark the presence of a spirit, a lingering imprint of past events or emotions that refuse to dissipate. Others think the chill is a warning, a subtle message from the unseen residents who continue to occupy the building. The origin of the hauntings is believed to be tied to past tenants who met untimely deaths. Historical accounts suggest that accidents, illnesses, and sometimes violent incidents claimed the lives of several residents over the decades. Some spirits are thought to remain attached to the building, their presence marked by the sounds, movements, and sensations reported by current occupants. Paranormal enthusiasts speculate that the energy of these unresolved deaths has lingered, imprinting itself upon the structure and continuing to interact with the living. Paranormal investigators have frequently visited the Belden Place apartments, documenting cold spots, unusual electromagnetic readings, and inexplicable audio phenomena. Some have captured faint whispers on recordings, while others have noted the sudden movement of objects or the appearance of shadowy figures. Video footage occasionally reveals indistinct shapes or blurs, suggesting a presence just beyond the visual spectrum. Investigators consistently report the sensation of being watched, a heavy, intangible awareness that seems to follow them from room to room. Despite the unsettling activity, residents continue to live within the Belden Place apartments. Over time, many learn to coexist with the unexplained, leaving lights on at night, keeping doors securely locked, and occasionally acknowledging the presence of the unseen with small gesture, placing flowers in hallways, or leaving notes as an offering. Some tenants describe a sense of companionship with the spirits, feeling that the apparitions are not harmful but rather echoes of lives that were abruptly interrupted. Others accept the phenomena as part of the Buildinga's identity, a reminder that the past is never truly gone. The Belden Place apartments are more than a place to reside. They are a living testament to the history of those who came before. The cries, footsteps, whispers, doors moving, and sudden chills all serve as reminders that the building carries the weight of its past. Where lives ended unexpectedly and energy lingered behind. Even in the stillest hours of the night, the apartments hum with activity from beyond, a subtle but persistent presence that refuses to fade. For those who live here, the ordinary and the extraordinary coexist, and every creak of floorboard or whisper through the hallway is a reminder that the spirits of Belden Place have never truly left. The Lakeview apartments in Chicago stand as a historic presence in one of the city's bustling neighborhoods, their brick exterior and vintage architectural details hinting at decades of life within. At first glance, the building appears ordinary, a typical city apartment complex with long hallways, broad windows, and worn wooden floors. Yet for those who reside within its walls, the Lakeview apartments are far from ordinary. Over the years, tenants have reported a series of unexplainable phenomena, strange sights, sudden chills, and whispering voices that have earned the building a reputation as one of Chicago's most haunted residences. One of the most common experiences reported by residents involves shadowy figures appearing in the hallways. These shapes are rarely fully visible, often perceived as dark outlines or blurred forms at the edge of vision. Tenants frequently describe seeing a figure standing silently at the end of a hallway, watching and disappearing when approached. One long-term resident recounted returning home late one night to find a dark figure in the corridor outside her apartment. As she drew closer, the figure seemed to dissolve into the shadows, leaving behind only the sense that she had been observed. Another tenant reported glimpsing a tall silhouette moving slowly past a staircase, vanishing as soon as she tried to focus on it. These fleeting encounters create a lingering feeling of unease, as if the building itself harbors a presence that is constantly aware of the living. Phantom whispers are another hallmark of the Lakeview apartments. Residents often report hearing indistinct murmurs in empty corridors or rooms, soft voices that seem to rise and fall, as if carrying a conversation from another time. Some say the whispers call their names, while others hear fragments of sentences or words they cannot understand. One tenant described lying awake in bed, listening to whispers drifting from the hallway, so clear that she could almost make out their meaning. Yet when she investigated, the corridor was empty, silent except for the faint echo of her own footsteps. These whispered voices contribute to the sense that unseen presences are moving through the building, communicating in ways the living cannot fully interpret. Cold spots are another frequent phenomenon reported by tenants. Certain rooms, corners, or hallways suddenly chill without any apparent cause, the temperature dropping sharply and unnaturally. Some residents describe walking through a room only to feel the air grow icy around them, an invisible presence brushing past. Others have experienced sudden drafts while lying in bed, accompanied by the soft sound of movement elsewhere in the apartment. These inexplicable temperature changes often coincide with other strange events, such as whispers or shadowy figures, heightening the sense of the building being alive with unseen energy. Doors and objects within the Lakeview apartments also seem to move on their own. Residents have reported doors opening or closing without explanation, books sliding from shelves, and personal items shifting overnight. One tenant recalled waking to find a chair moved several feet from its original position, while another described a lamp falling off a table for no reason, only to be found upright the next morning. These disturbances are often subtle but persistent, reinforcing the impression that the apartments are home to more than just the living. Many believe the haunting is tied to the building's long history and the lives of tenants who passed away within its walls. While the details are often murky, some accounts suggest that certain tragedies, illnesses, and accidents left strong emotional impressions, binding spirits to the apartments. Paranormal enthusiasts theorize that these energies manifest in the shadows, whispers, and cold spots experienced by residents, creating a lasting connection between past and present. Whether these presences are residual echoes or conscious spirits remains a matter of debate, but the experiences are consistent enough to establish the Lakeview Apartments as a place of ongoing spectral activity. Paranormal investigators have visited the building multiple times, documenting strange phenomena that correspond with tenant reports. Temperature readings frequently drop in certain hallways and rooms, often coinciding with sightings of figures or the sound of whispers. Audio recordings occasionally capture faint murmurs or footsteps in empty spaces, while video footage sometimes reveals shadows moving in ways that defy explanation. Investigators often describe a pervasive sense of being watched, a weight or pressure that follows them from room to room. These findings lend credibility to the stories shared by residents over the decades. Despite the unnerving experiences, life in the Lakeview Apartments continues. Tenants adapt, leaving lights on at night, keeping doors locked, and becoming familiar with the patterns of the unexplained activity. Some leave small gestures of acknowledgement and notes, trinkets, or flowers in hallways, believing that showing respect to lingering spirits can ease tension. Others accept the haunting as a part of the building's identity, understanding that they coexist with forces beyond the ordinary, invisible yet persistent. The Lakeview Apartments are more than just a residencia. They are a repository of memory, history, and lingering energy. Shadowy figures pacing the hallways, whispers drifting through empty rooms, cold drafts that seem to follow, and objects moving on their own all speak to a presence that refuses to be ignored. Even in the quietest hours of the night, the building hums with unseen activity, a subtle reminder that the past is never truly gone. Tenants come to understand that the Lakeview Apartments exist in a space where the ordinary and the extraordinary coexist, and that the spirits of those who lived and died here continue to make their presence known in whispers, shadows, and chilling touches. The Wicker Park Apartments, nestled in one of Chicago's most vibrant neighborhoods, are known for their charming brick exterior, historic architectural details, and a reputation that extends far beyond ordinary residential life. While the building appears as any typical city apartment complex, with its long hallways, vintage windows, and classic interiors, those who live or visit there know a different story, a story filled with strange occurrences, unsettling sounds, and mysterious sightings. For decades, the Wicker Park Apartments have earned a reputation as a place where the line between the living and the spectral is remarkably thin. Many tenants report hearing unexplained noises echoing through the hallways. Doors slam without warning, floors creak under invisible footsteps, and soft murmurs drift through empty rooms. One resident recalled returning home late one night to find the hallway outside his apartment eerily silent, only for the entrance door to suddenly slam shut behind him. Another tenant described lying awake in bed, listening to a series of rapid knocks on the walls and the faint sound of chairs sliding across the floor, despite no one else being in the building. These auditory phenomena often occur in the quietest hours, leaving residents on edge and wondering what is moving through the apartments. Shadowy figures are among the most unsettling manifestations reported in the Wicker Park Apartments. Tenants have seen dark shapes at the edges of their vision, often lingering near doorways, windows, or hallways. These forms appear to watch before vanishing abruptly when noticed. One tenant recounted seeing a tall shadow pacing slowly across the corridor outside her apartment. She froze, unable to move, and when she blinked, the figure had disappeared entirely. Others have described fleeting glimpses of shapes drifting across rooms or lingering near corners, leaving an impression of being observed by an unseen presence. The appearances are brief but leave a lasting sense of unease, as if the building itself is alive and aware of its occupants. Some residents have experienced more physical manifestations of the paranormal, including the sensation of invisible hands touching them during the night. One tenant reported waking in the middle of the night, feeling a cold pressure on her shoulder, as though someone had leaned over her bed, but when she turned, there was no one there. Another described the sensation of a light touch along his arm while sleeping, accompanied by a sudden chill that seemed to linger long after the sensation vanished. These experiences are often accompanied by other strange activity: doors moving, objects shifting, or whispering voices, reinforcing the idea that an unseen presence is interacting with the living. Objects in the apartments also seem to defy explanation. Tenants have reported books and small items falling from shelves, furniture shifting slightly overnight, and lights flickering in the absence of electrical issues. One resident described waking to find her apartment door open despite locking it before bed, with her belongings subtly displaced across the room. Another reported seeing a small lamp tilt as though nudged by an unseen force, only to return upright hours later. These movements, while often minor, contribute to a pervasive feeling that the building is inhabited by forces beyond ordinary comprehension. The haunting of the Wicker Park apartments is widely believed to be connected to multiple deaths in the surrounding area over the years. Historical accounts suggest that accidents, illnesses, and violent incidents claimed the lives of several individuals whose energy may have remained tied to the building. Some believe the spirits of these individuals continue to linger, creating the unexplained sounds, movements, and shadowy apparitions experienced by residents. Paranormal enthusiasts theorize that the combination of tragedy and emotional intensity left behind a residual energy that manifests as the strange and persistent activity reported over decades. Paranormal investigators have visited the Wicker Park apartments to document and study the unusual occurrences. Temperature readings frequently reveal sudden drops, particularly in hallways and rooms where shadows have been observed. Audio devices often capture faint whispers, footsteps, or other unexplainable sounds. Video footage occasionally reveals blurred figures moving across hallways or flickering in and out of existence. Investigators consistently report the sensation of being watched, a weight or pressure in certain areas that seems to track their movements. These findings often corroborate tenant experiences, strengthening the belief that the building harbors active paranormal phenomena. Despite the eerie activity, life continues in the Wicker Park apartments. Residents adapt to the disturbances by leaving lights on at night, securing doors, or avoiding certain areas after dark. Some leave small gestures of acknowledgement for the spirits, such as notes, flowers, or trinkets placed in hallways or near doorways. Others accept the haunting as part of the building's identity, learning to coexist with presence that, while unsettling, seems more curious than harmful. The Wicker Park apartments are more than a simple residence. They are a building imbued with history, memory, and lingering energy. Unexplained noises, shadowy figures, sudden chills, and invisible touches all speak to the unseen lives that continue to influence the space. Even in the quietest hours, the building hums with an activity just beyond perception. A subtle yet persistent reminder that the past is never truly gone. Tenants quickly learn that within these walls, the ordinary and the extraordinary exist side by side, and that those who pass still make themselves known in whispers, shadows, and the occasional cold touch of unseen hands. The Edgewater apartments in Chicago stand as a striking relic of the city's mid-century architecture, their brick FAA Section 8s and wide windows offering a glimpse into decades of history. On the surface, the building appears ordinary, a typical residential complex with long hallways, stairwells, and modest apartments. Yet for those who live or visit there, the Edgewater apartments are anything but ordinary. Over the years, tenants have reported a range of unexplained phenomena, from shadowy figures in stairwells to disembodied footsteps and sudden cold drafts, giving the building a reputation as one of Chicago's more haunted residences. Many residents first notice the building's presence through sounds. Footsteps echo through stairwells and hallways when no one else is around, slow and deliberate, sometimes pacing back and forth as if someone invisible is walking alongside them. One tenant described returning home late at night to find the stairwell empty, only to hear the unmistakable sound of shoes clicking on the steps above her. The footsteps continued in a steady rhythm before abruptly stopping. leaving her with a lingering sense of being watched. Another resident recounted hearing footsteps approach his apartment door, then recede as he opened it, despite being alone inside. These persistent sounds suggest a presence that moves freely through the building, unseen yet undeniable. Shadowy figures are a common sight in the Edgewater apartments, often appearing at the edges of vision. One long-term resident described glimpsing a tall figure standing silently in the stairwell outside his apartment. When he blinked and looked again, the figure had vanished, leaving only an empty stairwell and a chilling sense of observation. Others have reported similar sightings, a fleeting shadow along a hallway, a form standing at the end of the corridor, or a figure disappearing through a wall. These sightings, though brief, create a lasting impression and reinforce the Buldinga's eerie reputation. Cold drafts frequently accompany these experiences. Certain rooms or hallways inexplicably chill, the temperature dropping sharply and unnaturally. Tenants often report feeling a sudden icy breeze brush past them while standing in their apartments or walking through common areas. One tenant recounted sitting in her living room when a wave of cold air swept across the room, accompanied by the faint sound of whispering from a hallway. Another described entering a stairwell to find the temperature plummeting so suddenly that she could see her breath, even though it was summer outside. These chilling sensations often coincide with other phenomena, such as shadows or moving objects, heightening the sense that something unseen is actively present in the building. Objects in the Edgewater apartments also behave in ways that defy explanation. Residents report items falling from shelves, chairs moving slightly, and personal belongings shifting overnight. One tenant awoke to find a lamp had toppled from her nightstand, despite no one entering the room. Another described his keys and wallet appearing in a different location than where he had left them, without any logical explanation. These subtle disturbances, when combined with sounds, shadows, and cold drafts, create an atmosphere in which the ordinary laws of reality seem to bend. The haunting of the Edgewater apartments is often attributed to a tenant who mysteriously disappeared in the 1950s. Little is known about the individual's fate, but the story has persisted in local lore for decades. Some believe the tenant met with foul play, while others think the disappearance was purely accidental. Regardless of the circumstances, many theorize that the unexplained energy in the Buldinga, manifested in shadows, footsteps, cold drafts, and moving objects, is tied to this unresolved event. Paranormal enthusiasts suggest that the intensity of the disappearance, combined with the emotional resonance of the tenant's presence, left a lingering imprint that continues to interact with the living. Paranormal investigators have visited the Edgewater apartments, documenting unusual phenomena that correlate with tenant reports. Sudden temperature drops are common in specific stairwells and hallways, often coinciding with sightings of figures or unexplained sounds. Audio devices occasionally capture faint footsteps, whispers, or murmurs that cannot be attributed to human activity. Video recordings sometimes reveal blurred shapes moving along hallways or lingering near stairwells. Investigators frequently report the sensation of being watched, a pressure or heaviness in certain areas that seems tied to unseen presence. These findings lend credibility to the numerous tenant experiences reported over the years. Despite the unsettling activity, residents continue to inhabit the Edgewater apartments. Many adapt to the occurrences, leaving lights on at night, securing doors. And becoming familiar with the Buldinga's unusual patterns. Others simply accept the activity as a part of the Buldinga's character, a constant reminder that life and the past coexist in the same space. The Edgewater apartments are more than a place to live. They are a building infused with history, memory, and lingering energy. Shadowy figures pacing stairwells, disembodied footsteps echoing through hallways, sudden cold drafts, and moving objects all suggest that the past continues to inhabit the present. Even in the quietest hours of night, the building hums with a presence that cannot be seen but is undeniably felt. Tenants come to understand that within these walls, the ordinary and the supernatural coexist, and that the unresolved disappearance of a long-ago resident continues to leave its mark. a haunting echo that refuses to fade with time. The Gold Coast apartment in Chicago stand as an elegant symbol of the city's historic charm. Their brick FAA section Ade, detailed stonework, and grand entrances reflecting decades of architectural pride. To casual observers, the building appears as any upscale urban residence, offering luxury and convenience in the heart of the city. Yet, behind the polished exterior and ornate interiors lies a reputation that sets the Gold Coast apartments apart, a reputation for eerie and inexplicable occurrences that have left tenants both fascinated and unnerved for decades. Many residents first notice the Building's presence through unusual sights. Shadowy figures are reported to appear at the edges of vision, often lingering in hallways or near doorways before vanishing. Tenants describe seeing apparitions of long-deceased residents wander in the halls, moving slowly and deliberately as though replaying moments from their past. One tenant recalled walking through a hallway late at night, only to see a figure in period attire gliding silently toward a stairwell. When she attempted to follow, the apparition disappeared into the wall, leaving only a lingering chill and the sense of having witnessed something not of this world. Others have reported glimpses of figures standing at the end of corridors or appearing from corners, leaving a lasting impression that they are being watched by unseen observers. Doors opening and closing without explanation is another common phenomenon in the Gold Coast apartments. One tenant described returning home to find the front door of his apartment ajar, though he had locked it carefully before leaving. Another recounted lying in bed when his bedroom door suddenly opened, accompanied by the faint sound of footsteps in the adjoining hallway, only to stop abruptly with no one in sight. These events create a pervasive feeling of intrusion, as if invisible presences move freely through the apartments. Whispers in empty rooms are frequently reported, adding to the Building's unsettling atmosphere. Tenants describe soft voices that drift through apartments or hallways, often indistinct, but occasionally repeating words or names. One resident described lying awake at night, listening to whispers emanating from the hallway outside, feeling as though the voices were aware of her presence, but no one was there. These whispers, subtle yet persistent, contribute to the overall sense that the building itself is alive with memories and unseen activity. Objects in the apartments also exhibit strange behaviors. Books fall from shelves, chairs move slightly, and small personal items appear in different locations from where they were left. One tenant awoke to find a lamp had toppled over with no sign of disturbance, while another reported her keys had vanished from a kitchen counter, only to reappear on a hallway table hours later. These incidents, combined with the appearances of shadows, ghostly figures, and unexplained sounds, create a consistent pattern of phenomena that tenants cannot easily dismiss. The hauntings at the Gold Coast apartments are often linked to tragic accidents during the building's early years. Historical records suggest that several residents suffered untimely deaths, some due to misfortune, illness, or mishaps related to the Building's construction and early operation. Paranormal enthusiasts speculate that the emotional energy of these tragedies left an imprint on the building, resulting in the ongoing disturbances reported by tenants. The repeated appearance of apparitions, the unexplained sounds, and the movement of objects are thought to be manifestations of this lingering energy, tied to moments of pain, fear, and sudden loss from the past. Paranormal investigators have explored the Gold Coast apartments to document and study these unusual occurrences. Temperature readings often reveal sudden drops in certain rooms and hallways, sometimes coinciding with the appearance of figures or movement of objects. Audio recordings capture faint whispers, creaks, and steps that cannot be attributed to human activity. Cameras occasionally reveal fleeting shadows or blurs in hallways, reinforcing reports from residents. Investigators often report the sensation of being watched, a weight or pressure that seems to follow them as they move through the building, adding further evidence to support the claims of paranormal activity. Despite the unsettling phenomena, tenants continue to live in the Gold Coast apartments. Many adapt to the activity by leaving lights on at night, keeping doors securely closed, or avoiding certain areas after dark. Some leave small tokens in hallways or near doors, believing that acknowledging the presence of lingering spirits can maintain a delicate balance between the living and the unseen. Others simply accept the occurrences as part of the Bodinga-esque character, learning to coexist with forces that are not fully understood but are undeniably present. The Gold Coast apartments are more than a place to live. They are a repository of history, memory, and lingering energy. Ghostly figures drifting to the halls, doors opening and closing their own accord, whispers echoing through empty rooms, and objects moving inexplicably all speak to a presence that refuses to be ignored. Even in the quietest hours of night, the building hums with unseen activity, a subtle yet persistent reminder that the past continues to inhabit the present. Residents quickly learn that within these walls, the ordinary and the extraordinary coexist, and that the spirits of those who came before continue to make themselves known through shadows, sounds, and the inexplicable movements that define the haunted legacy of the Gold Coast apartments. The Hyde Park apartments, nestled in one of Chicago's most historic neighborhoods, stand as a building of understated elegance, their brick FAA section odd and classic design blending with the surrounding streets. At first glance, they appear to be ordinary residential apartments, offering comfort and a sense of city living. Yet, beneath this FAA section odd lies a reputation that has grown over decades, a reputation for paranormal activity that has left residents both fascinated and unnerved. The Hyde Park apartments are known among locals for a series of strange and often chilling occurrences, marking the building as one of Chicago's haunted locations. Many tenants first notice unusual sounds. Voices drift through the hallways, often when no one else is present. Sometimes these are indistinct murmurs, faint and fragmented, while other times they are clear enough to make out words or names. One long-term resident recounted lying awake late at night when she heard someone calling her name from the hallway outside her apartment. When she stepped into the corridor, it was empty, silent except for the echo of her own footsteps. Others have reported hearing conversations taking place in rooms that are unoccupied, the voices rising and falling as though the occupants had never left. These auditory experiences often instill a deep sense of unease, leaving tenants aware that something unseen is moving through the building. Shadowy figures are frequently reported by residents. These forms appear at the edges of vision, lingering in hallways, stairwells, or corners of rooms. One tenant described walking down the corridor to find a dark silhouette standing just outside her door, watching silently before dissolving into the shadows when she blinked. Another reported seeing a figure glide across the stairwell, its movement smooth and deliberate, vanishing into the floor below. These fleeting sightings leave a lingering impression, as if the building itself houses presences that are constantly aware of the living, yet remain just beyond the reach of perception. Some residents have experienced physical manifestations of the haunting. Cold hands brushing against skin, sudden chills, and inexplicable pressure in certain areas of the apartments are commonly reported. One tenant described waking in the middle of the night to feel an icy hand graze her shoulder, accompanied by a wave of fear and a drop in temperature in the room. Another recounted standing in the hallway when a cold breeze swept past, distinct from any draft or air conditioning, as if something unseen had moved through the space. These sensations, though brief, are vivid and leave residents with an awareness of forces beyond the ordinary. Objects within the Hyde Park apartments also move without explanation. Tenants have reported books sliding from shelves, lamps tipping over, and personal items disappearing and reappearing in different locations. One resident recounted waking to find her coffee mug levitating slightly above a table before settling back with a soft clatter. Another found her keys on the kitchen counter when she had left them on her dresser hours before. These inexplicable movements, combined with shadows, whispers, and sudden chills, create a pervasive sense that the building is alive with unseen activity. The origins of the haunting are widely believed to trace back to a tenant who died under mysterious circumstances in the 1940s. The details of the death are vague, shrouded in rumors of accidents or foul play. But local legend holds that the tragedy left a lingering energy within the building. Paranormal enthusiasts suggest that the intensity of the event anchored a restless spirit to the apartments. Resulting in the strange occurrences reported by residents over the decades, the cumulative presence of past residents who experienced untimely deaths may have amplified this energy. Paranormal investigators have frequently visited the Hyde Park apartments, documenting phenomena that align with tenant reports. Sudden drops in temperature are often detected in hallways and specific rooms, coinciding with sightings of shadows or movement of objects. Audio recordings occasionally capture faint whispers, footsteps, or murmurs from areas that are otherwise empty. Video footage sometimes shows blurred shapes or fleeting figures in corridors or stairwells. Investigators also describe the feeling of being watched, a heavy, unseen presence that seems to track movement throughout the building. These findings lend credibility to the experiences reported by tenants over the decades. Despite the eerie activity, life continues in the Hyde Park apartments. Residents adapt leaving lights on at night, keeping doors locked, and familiarizing themselves with the areas where activity is most frequent. Some leave small tokens such as notes, flowers, or trinkets as gestures of acknowledgement toward the lingering spirits. Others accept the presence as part of the Bodinga's identity, coexisting with a force that is not harmful but undeniably present. Tenants often report a mixture of fear and fascination, understanding that the Bodinga's past continues to influence its present. The Hyde Park apartments are more than just a residence. They are a place where history, memory, and lingering energy converge. Shadowy figures, whispering voices, sudden chills, and levitating objects all serve as reminders that the past is never truly gone. Even in the quietest hours of the night, the building hums with a presence that is felt as much as it is unseen. For those who live within its walls, the Hyde Park apartments exist in a space where the ordinary and the extraordinary intertwine. And the ordinary and the extraordinary intertwine, and the spirits of those who came before continue to make themselves known through whispers. The spirits of those who came before continue to make themselves known through whispers, shadows, and chilling touches that refuse to be ignored. The South Loop apartments, located in one of Chicago's busiest neighborhoods, stand as a mixture of modern design and historic presence. At first glance, the building appears ordinarily well-maintained, with wide hallways, balconies overlooking the city streets, and apartments designed for comfortable urban living. Yet for those who live inside, the South Loop apartments are far from ordinary. Over decades, tenants have reported a series of unexplained and unsettling phenomena, from echoing footsteps to sudden chills and shadowy figures, earning the building a reputation as one of the city's most haunted residential complexes. Many residents first notice unusual sounds. Footsteps echo through empty hallways, often pacing slowly as though someone unseen is moving along the corridors. One tenant described returning home late at night and hearing the sound of deliberate steps approaching her apartment door, only for the hall to be completely empty when she opened it. Another reported hearing a series of running footsteps down the stairwell while lying in bed, the sound fading abruptly without explanation. These repeated auditory experiences create a pervasive feeling of being watched, as though unseen presences are constantly moving through the building. Ghostly whispers add another layer of unease. Tenants often report faint voices in hallways or rooms, indistinct yet unmistakably human. Some whispers call their names, while others repeat fragmented phrases or words that make no sense. One long-term resident recounted hearing urgent whispers in the corridor outside her apartment, the tone almost pleading, only for the voices to vanish when she attempted to investigate. Others report hearing conversations in empty rooms or the soft murmur of someone walking past, leaving a sense of being observed by forces beyond the living. These whispers, subtle yet persistent, contribute to Bodinga's haunted reputation and reinforce the idea that past events still linger within the walls. Sudden cold drafts are a common occurrence in the South Loop apartments. Tenants report rooms or hallways dropping in temperature unexpectedly, often accompanied by other paranormal activity. One resident described standing in her kitchen when a sudden wave of icy air swept past, chilling her to the bone, despite it being midsummer. Another noted a sharp drop in temperature in the stairwell, coinciding with the appearance of a shadowy figure at the end of the corridor. These cold spots often signal the presence of something unseen, leaving residents aware that the building may be more than just brick and mortar. Shadowy figures are among the most unsettling experiences for tenants. These dark shapes appear at the edges of vision, lingering near corners, stairwells, or hallways, and vanish when approached directly. One resident described seeing a tall, indistinct figure standing silently in the corridor outside her apartment, watching before disappearing into the shadows. Another reported glimpsing a shadow moving across the hallway, pausing as if observing, then melting into the walls. These figures, though fleeting, leave a lasting impression, as if the building is inhabited by presences that are aware of the living yet remain just beyond perception. The hauntings at the South Loop Apartments are closely tied to a fire that occurred in the building decades ago. Historical records suggest that the fire claimed several lives, leaving tragedy and sorrow imprinted upon the structure. Many believe that the emotional energy of that disaster has lingered, giving rise to the strange and persistent activity reported by tenants. The footsteps, whispers, cold drafts, and shadowy figures are thought to be manifestations of residual energy from the lives lost, continuing to influence the living as the building ages. Paranormal enthusiasts speculate that this energy is particularly strong in areas of the building where the fire was most intense, creating hotspotted activity that remain unexplained to this day. Paranormal investigators have documented activity within the South Loop Apartments that aligns with tenant reports. Temperature sensors detect sudden drops, particularly in hallways and near stairwells, coinciding with shadow sightings or inexplicable sounds. Paranormal investigators have documented activity within the South Loop Apartments that aligns with tenant reports. Audio recordings capture faint whispers, murmurs, or footsteps in empty spaces. Video footage occasionally shows blurred shapes or fleeting movements, reinforcing accounts of shadowy figures. Investigators often describe a feeling of being watched, a heavy, unexplainable pressure in certain rooms, or sudden sensations of cold that cannot be attributed to natural causes. These findings lend weight to the experiences of residents, suggesting that the building harbors active paranormal energy. Despite the haunting activity, life continues within the South Loop Apartments. Residents adapt, leaving lights on at night, keeping doors securely locked, and becoming familiar with the areas where activity is most frequent. Some leave small gestures of acknowledgement for the spirits, such as notes, flowers, or trinkets in hallways or on stairwells. Others learn to coexist with the unusual occurrences, understanding that while phenomena are unsettling, they are largely passive and simply a reminder of the Building's tragic history. The South Loop Apartments are more than just a residence. They are a place where memory, history, and lingering energy converge. Echoing footsteps, whispers in empty rooms, sudden cold drafts, and shadowy figures all serve as reminders that past tragedies continue to inhabit the present. Even in the quietest hours of the night, the building hums with unseen activity, a subtle yet persistent presence that refuses to be ignored. Tenants come to understand that within these walls, the ordinary and the supernatural coexist, and that the souls affected by the fire decades ago continue to make themselves known, leaving traces of their presence through sound, movement, and a chilling sense of being watched. The River North Apartments in Chicago stand as a striking example of mid-century architecture, their brick and steel exterior blending seamlessly with the bustling energy of the neighborhood. On the surface, the building seems like any other urban apartment complex of functional, well-maintained, and home to countless tenants over the decades. Yet beneath its conventional exterior lies a reputation that has grown over time, one steeped in mystery and fear. The River North Apartments are widely known among residents and locals for paranormal activity, with numerous reports of shadowy figures, sudden cold spots, and unexplained sounds echoing through the halls. Many tenants first noticed the presence of something unusual through the movement of doors. One long-term resident recalled returning home late one evening to find the door to her apartment slightly ajar, despite having locked it securely. Another described waking in the middle of the night to the sound of bedroom door creaking open, followed by soft footsteps moving across the floor, only to stop abruptly as though the invisible visitor had vanished. These door movements are often accompanied by other phenomena, creating a pervasive sense that unseen presences are actively moving through the building. Shadowy figures are a hallmark of the River North Apartments' haunting. Tenants report seeing dark silhouettes lingering in hallways, stairwells, and at the edges of their vision. One resident recounted walking toward her apartment late at night and spotting a tall, indistinct shape standing silently at the end of the corridor. When she focused on it, the figure seemed to melt into the shadows, leaving only an empty hallway and the eerie sensation of being observed. Others have reported seeing fleeting forms move past corners or appear from doorways, leaving a chilling impression that the building is home to residents who no longer belong to the world of the living. Cold spots are another common and unnerving phenomenon. Tenants frequently experience sudden drops in temperature that appear without cause, sometimes in the middle of summer or in areas with functioning heating and cooling systems. One resident described entering a hallway and feeling the air grow icy, her breath visible for a few moments before the temperature returned to normal. Another reported standing in her living room when a cold draft brushed past her, accompanied by the faint sound of movement across the floor. These unexplained chills often coincide with sightings of shadows or the movement of doors, reinforcing the feeling that the building is alive with unseen activity. Perhaps most disturbing are the cries for help reported by some tenants. Faint, agonized voices sometimes echo through the empty hallways, calling out names or crying in despair. One tenant described hearing a prolonged, heart-wrenching wail late at night, so clear that she felt compelled to search the building for someone in need, only to find the corridors empty. Another reported hearing urgent whispers and muted cries emanating from the stairwell, sending chills down his spine. These vocal phenomena suggest that the spirits haunting the River North Apartments are not passive. They carry the emotional imprint of past events, perhaps seeking resolution or recognition from the living. The origin of Bodinga-esque curse is believed to date back to a violent crime that occurred in the 1960s. Historical accounts suggest that a tenant was killed under mysterious and brutal circumstances, and the tragedy left a lingering mark on the building. Paranormal enthusiasts theorize that the violent energy from the crime anchored spirits to the apartments, creating a restless presence that persists to this day. The cries, shadows, cold spots, and unexplained door movements are seen as manifestations of this residual energy, a reminder that the echoes of past tragedies continue to affect the living. Paranormal investigators have visited the River North Apartments to study and document these phenomena. Temperature sensors frequently detect sudden drops, particularly near hallways and stairwells associated with sightings. Audio recordings have captured faint whispers, cries, and footsteps that cannot be attributed to human activity. Video footage occasionally shows blurred figures or shadows moving across hallways or lingering in corners. Investigators also report the persistent sensation of being watched, a heavy, intangible presence that seems to track them through the building. These findings often corroborate tenant experiences, strengthening the belief that the apartments are indeed haunted by the spirits of former residents. Despite the unsettling activity, life continues for those who reside in the River North Apartments. Tenants adapt by leaving lights on at night, keeping doors securely locked, and becoming familiar with areas where activity is most frequent. Some leave small gestures of acknowledgement, such as notes, flowers, or trinkets placed in hallways or stairwells, in a belief that recognition may ease the lingering spirits. Others accept the phenomena as an inherent part of the Bodinga-esque character, learning to coexist with forces that are both unseen and unexplainable. The River North Apartments are more than just a residential building. They are a repository of memory, tragedy, and lingering energy. Doors that move on their own, sudden cold drafts, cries echoing through empty hallways, and shadowy figures all speak to the presence of past residents whose lives ended too soon. Even in the quietest hours of night, the building hums with unseen activity, a subtle but persistent reminder that history refuses to be forgotten. Within these walls, the ordinary and the supernatural exist side by side, and the spirits of the River North Apartments continue to make themselves known through shadows, sounds, and the chilling sense that the past is never truly left. The near North Side apartments in Chicago stand as a striking example of urban living with a storied past. At first glance, the building seems like any other mid-century residential complex. Brick FAA section aids, long corridors, and apartments designed for comfortable city life. Yet beneath this ordinary exterior lies a history marked by tragedy, mystery, and unexplained occurrences. Over the decades, the near North Side apartments have earned a reputation as a place where the veil between the living and the dead is thin, and residents report experiences that defy explanation. One of the most common phenomena reported involves ghostly apparitions. Tenants describe seeing figures lingering in hallways, standing silently near doorways, or moving gracefully across rooms. These apparitions are often fleeting, vanishing the moment they are observed directly, leaving residents with a lingering sense of unease. One tenant recounted returning home late at night to see a translucent figure pacing near the stairwell. When he approached, the figure dissolved into thin air, leaving the hallway empty and quiet. Others have reported glimpses of shadowy silhouettes standing at the end of corridors or appearing in doorways, only to vanish moments later. These encounters often leave tenants with an unsettling awareness that the building is inhabited by more than just the living. Unexplained noises are another frequent occurrence. Residents report hearing footsteps in empty hallways, doors creaking open or close on their own, and faint whispers that seem to drift from room to room. One tenant described lying awake at night, listening to a series of soft knocks and shuffling sounds outside her apartment, only to find the corridor completely empty when she investigated. Another recalled hearing a voice calling his name from the stairwell, urgent yet faint, leaving him frozen with both fear and curiosity. These auditory experiences contribute to the sense that unseen presences are moving freely throughout the building, making themselves known without physical form. Objects moving without contact are another hallmark of the hauntings in the near North Side apartments. One tenant awoke to find a chair had shifted across the room, despite no one having entered the apartment. Another described a glass falling from a counter, only to be found upright the next morning. These inexplicable movements, often subtle but consistent, reinforce the impression that the building is alive with unseen energy. Mirrors, in particular, seem to act as gateways for the unexplained. Several tenants have reported seeing shadowy figures appear in reflections, only to vanish when they turn toward them. One long-term resident described noticing a figure standing behind her in the mirror while she brushed her hair, but when she spun around, no one was there. Another recounted seeing a shadowy form in the reflection of a hallway mirror, watching silently before fading completely. These mirror apparitions create an unsettling reminder that the supernatural presence in the building can manifest in unexpected ways, challenging residents' sense of reality and safety. Local legend ties these hauntings to a series of unsolved murders and tragic accidents over the decades. Historical accounts suggest that several tenants met untimely deaths within the apartments, leaving behind unresolved energy that continues to influence the living. Some believe that these spirits are trapped, unable to move on due to the sudden or violent nature of their deaths. Others think the apparitions are drawn to the emotional intensity of the building, replaying fragments of their lives over and over. Whatever the explanation, the connection between past tragedies and present hauntings seems undeniable, lending weight to the experiences reported by residents. Paranormal investigators have frequently explored the near North Side apartments to document and study these occurrences. Temperature readings often detect sudden drops, particularly in hallways and rooms associated with sightings. Audio devices capture faint whispers, creaks, and footsteps that cannot be attributed to human activity. Video footage occasionally reveals blurred shapes moving across corridors or lingering near mirrors and stairwells. Investigators frequently report the sensation of being watched, a heaviness or pressure in certain rooms, and sudden chills that defy natural explanation. These findings often corroborate tenant experiences, adding credibility to the Bodinga's haunted reputation. Despite the unnerving activity, life continues in the near North Side apartments. Residents adapt to the unusual occurrences, leaving lights on at night, keeping doors securely closed, and becoming familiar with areas where activity is most frequent. Some leave small tokens of acknowledgement, such as flowers, notes, or trinkets in hallways or near mirrors, believing that gestures of respect may ease the presence of lingering spirits. Others simply accept the buildinga as haunted nature, coexisting with a presence that is unsettling yet rarely harmful, a constant reminder of the buildinga's tragic past. The near Northside apartments are more than a residence. They are a living archive of memory, tragedy, and lingering energy. Ghostly apparitions drifting through hallways, unexplained noises echoing in empty rooms, objects moving without cause, and shadowy figures appearing in mirrors all point to a presence that refuses to be ignored. Even in the quietest hours of the night, the building hums with unseen activity, a subtle but persistent reminder that the past continues to inhabit the present. Within these walls, the ordinary and the supernatural coexist, and the spirits of those who died under tragic circumstances continue to make themselves known, leaving traces of their presence through shadows, sounds, and fleeting appearances that linger long after they vanish. The Logan Square Apartments, located in one of Chicago's historic neighborhoods, stand as a building of classic architecture and quiet elegance. From the outside, the brick FAA section ade and tall windows give little indication of the unsettling history that lies within. Yet for those who live or visit, the Logan Square Apartments are anything but ordinary. Over the decades, tenants have reported a series of unexplained occurrences that have cemented the buildinga's reputation as haunted. Shadowy figures pacing hallways, doors moving on their own, whispers in the night, and even invisible touches have become part of life for those who reside within its walls. Many tenants first notice the unusual activity through sounds and movements in the hallways. Footsteps are reported echoing along the corridors at all hours, often when no one else is present. One long-term resident described returning home late at night to hear slow, deliberate steps pacing outside her apartment door. When she opened it to investigate, the hallway was empty, yet the sound seemed to follow her as she moved through the corridor. Others have reported hearing the rapid shuffle of feet running up or down stairs, the creak of floorboards, and even the sound of doors opening and closing without any human presence. These persistent sounds create a lingering sense that the building itself is alive with unseen activity. Shadowy figures are another frequent phenomenon. Residents report seeing indistinct forms standing at the end of hallways, moving silently along corridors, or lingering near stairwells. One tenant recounted walking toward her apartment late at night, only to see a tall, dark silhouette pacing slowly near the stairwell. When she blinked, the figure had vanished, leaving nothing but quiet, empty corridor. Another described glimpsing a shadow in the corner of her room, watching her from the darkness before fading away as she turned her gaze. These fleeting visions leave a lasting impression, making tenants feel as though they are being observed by presences that exist just beyond the threshold of reality. Doors opening and closing without explanation are among the most unsettling experiences reported. Tenants have described bedroom and apartment doors swinging open or shutting on their own, sometimes with force enough to startle. One resident woke in the middle of the night to the sound of her apartment door creaking open, followed by soft, dragging noises across the floor. When she checked, the room was empty. Another tenant reported coming home to find the main entrance slightly ajar despite locking it securely earlier in the day. Some residents have experienced physical contact with the unseen. Invisible hands brushing against them while sleeping or standing in their apartments are reported with alarming frequency. One tenant described waking to feel a cold pressure on her shoulder, as though someone had leaned over her bed, only to find the room empty. Another recounted the sensation of a hand lightly gripping his wrist as he walked through a hallway, accompanied by a sudden chill that made his skin crawl. These encounters, brief yet intense, reinforce the idea that the Logan Square Apartments are not just haunted by sights and sounds, but by forces capable of interacting with the living. Local legend ties the hauntings to tragic events during the building's early years. Historical records and oral accounts suggest that several tenants suffered untimely deaths, some accidental, others under more mysterious circumstances. Paranormal enthusiasts believe that these tragedies left behind lingering emotional energy, which continues to manifest as the strange occurrences experienced by residents. The footsteps, whispers, shadowy figures, moving doors, and invisible touches are thought to be the residual presence of those who died within the building, replaying fragments of their lives or seeking acknowledgement from the living. Paranormal investigators have explored the Logan Square apartments to study these phenomena. Temperature readings often detect sudden drops, particularly near hallways and stairwells associated with sightings. Audio devices have captured faint whispers, footsteps, and murmurs in empty rooms. Video recordings sometimes show fleeting shapes or blurred shadows moving across corridors or lingering near doors. Investigators frequently describe a sensation of being watched, a weight or pressure that seems to follow them through specific areas, and sudden chills that defy natural explanation. These findings often align with tenant experiences, adding credibility to the Bodinga-esque haunted reputation. Despite the unnerving activity, residents continue to inhabit the Logan Square apartments. Many adapt by leaving lights on at night, keeping doors securely closed, and avoiding areas where activity is most frequent. Some leave small tokens of acknowledgement, such as flowers or trinkets placed in hallways or stairwells, as a gesture of respect toward lingering spirits. Others simply accept the haunting as part of the Bodinga-esque identity, learning to coexist with a presence that is unsettling but rarely harmful. The Logan Square apartments are more than just a place to live. They are a repository of memory, tragedy, and lingering energy. Shadowy figures pacing the hallways, doors opening and closing on their own, whispers in the night, and invisible touches all point to a presence that refuses to be ignored. Even in the quietest hours, the building hums with unseen activity, a subtle yet persistent reminder that the past continues to inhabit the present. Within these walls, the ordinary and the supernatural exist side by side, and the spirits of those who suffered during Bodinga's early years continue to make themselves known, leaving traces of their presence in every shadow, sound, and unexplained movement. The Old Town apartments in Chicago stand as a reminder of the city's storied past. From the outside, the building appears unassuming with brick walls, tall windows, and a design that blends with the historic neighborhood. Yet behind its classic FAA Section Ade lies a reputation steeped in mystery and fear. For decades, residents and visitors alike have reported strange and unsettling occurrences, earning the Old Town apartments a reputation as one of the city's most haunted residences. Ghostly sightings, unexplained sounds, and physical manifestations of unseen forces have become part of the Bodinga-esque eerie character, leaving a lasting impression on anyone who spends time within its walls. Many tenants first encounter the haunting through spectral sightings. Figures dressed in early 20th century clothing are often reported moving silently through hallways, stairwells, or appearing at the edge of a room. One resident recalled walking down a dimly lit corridor when she saw a man in a suit and bowler hat pacing slowly toward the stairwell. As she focused on him, he vanished into thin air, leaving only an empty hallway and a chill that lingered for hours. Others have seen women in long, flowing dresses drifting through the halls or standing at apartment doors, disappearing when approached. These fleeting apparitions create a sense of stepping into a past era, a ghostly echo of the Bodinga-esque long history. Phantom footsteps are another common phenomenon in the Old Town apartments. Tenants frequently report hearing shoes clicking on the floors of empty hallways, pacing slowly or running briefly before fading into silence. One tenant described returning home late at night and hearing hurried footsteps running down the corridor behind her, stopping abruptly when she turned to look. Another reported the soft tread of shoes ascending the stairs while he lay in bed, only to find the stairwell empty when he investigated. These unexplained sounds often coincide with sightings of figures or other paranormal activity, reinforcing the sense that unseen residents continue to roam the building. Objects moving mysteriously add another layer of unease. Residents report personal belongings appearing in different locations without explanation. One tenant described waking to find her lamp had toppled over, even though no one had entered the apartment. Another recounted discovering his keys on a counter, far from where he had left them the night before. Some residents have experienced physical contact with the unseen, cold hands brushing against shoulders, arms, or even faces are reported with alarming regularity. One tenant described waking in the dark to feel a frigid hand resting on her shoulder, accompanied by an overwhelming sense of being watched. Another recounted the sensation of a hand lightly gripping his wrist as he walked down a hallway, followed by an icy draft that seemed to seep into the room. These encounters are brief but intensely unnerving, leaving tenants acutely aware of a presence that exists just beyond perception. The Bodinga-esque curse is often linked to multiple untimely deaths that occurred over decades. Historical records and oral accounts suggest that accidents, illnesses, and unexplained deaths claimed the lives of numerous residents within the apartments. Paranormal enthusiasts speculate that the energy from these tragedies has left a lasting imprint, manifesting as the spectral figures, phantom footsteps, and moving objects reported by tenants. Some believe that the spirits are drawn to areas where the most intense emotional events took place, while others suggest that the building itself has absorbed the memories of its deceased residents, replaying them through unexplained phenomena. Paranormal investigators have frequently studied the old town apartments to document and understand the strange activity. Temperature sensors often detect sudden drops, particularly in hallways or rooms associated with sightings. Audio devices record faint whispers, footsteps, and unexplainable murmurs in otherwise empty spaces. Video footage sometimes captures blurred shapes moving through hallways or lingering near stairwells. Investigators often report the sensation of being observed, a heavy, intangible presence that follows them as they move through the building. These findings frequently corroborate tenant experiences, lending credibility to the long-standing claims of haunting. Despite the unsettling activity, tenants continue to inhabit the old town apartments. Many adapt by leaving lights on at night, keeping doors securely closed, and becoming familiar with the areas most affected by paranormal activity. Some leave small offerings, such as flowers or trinkets, as a sign of respect to lingering spirits. Others accept the presence as part of the building's identity, learning to coexist with a force that is largely invisible but undeniably present. The old town apartments are more than a residence. They are a living record of history, tragedy, and lingering energy. Ghostly figures in early 20th century attire, phantom footsteps echoing through hallways, objects moving without cause. Cold touches all point to the continued presence of those who have passed. The building hums with unseen activity, a subtle yet persistent reminder. The ordinary and the supernatural coexist, and the spirits of former residents, leaving traces of their presence through shadows, sounds, and fleeting apparitions that linger long after they vanish. The West Loop Apartments in Chicago, a prominent feature of the city's historic West Loop neighborhood, appear at first glance as a typical residential building. Its brick exterior, tall windows, and clean lines suggest comfort and modern urban living. Yet for those who reside within its walls, the apartments are anything but ordinary. Over the decades, tenants have reported a series of strange and unsettling phenomena, earning the building a reputation as one of the city's most haunted residences. Whispers in empty hallways, shadowy figures moving silently, sudden chills, and objects shifting without explanation have all been documented, creating an atmosphere of unease that pervades the West Loop apartments. Many tenants first notice the haunting through sound. Whispers are frequently reported, drifting through hallways, stairwells, and sometimes within apartments themselves. These murmurs often call out names, repeat fragments of phrases, or carry an urgent, pleading tone. One resident recalled lying awake late at night as faint whispers echoed just outside her bedroom door, growing louder and then fading as she approached. Another reported hearing fragmented conversations in the hall while returning from work, though no one else was present. The whispers create a sense of presence that is felt as much as it is heard, giving tenants the unsettling feeling that they are never truly alone. Footsteps are another common phenomenon. Tenants frequently hear shoes striking the floor of empty corridors, sometimes pacing slowly, other times running briefly before fading into silence. One tenant described returning home to hear hurried footsteps following her down the hallway, stopping abruptly when she turned to look, yet no one was there. Another reported hearing the soft tread of shoes in the stairwell during the night. only to find the area deserted. These phantom steps often accompany sightings of shadowy figures, reinforcing the impression that the building is alive with restless energy from those who no longer walk among the living. Shadowy figures are among the most unsettling experiences in the West Loop apartments. Residents report glimpsing dark silhouettes at the edge of vision, often lingering in hallways, near stairwells, or in corners. One tenant described seeing a tall figure moving silently down the corridor, its form indistinct yet unmistakably human, before vanishing into the darkness. Another recounted spotting a shadow at the top of the stairs, watching silently before fading from view. These fleeting appearances leave tenants with a sense of being observed and a lingering awareness that the building is inhabited by unseen presences. Sudden chills and cold spots frequently accompany these sightings. Tenants have reported abrupt drops in temperature that appear without explanation, sometimes in fully heated apartments or well-insulated hallways. One resident described standing in the living room when a wave of icy air swept over her, leaving her shivering even as the temperature outside remained warm. Another noted that a hallway she often walked through at night would become bitterly cold for no reason, particularly when she sensed a presence nearby. These sudden chills, often paired with other paranormal activity, reinforce the sensation that the West Loop apartments are touched by unseen forces. Objects moving on their own is another hallmark of the Bodinga-S hauntings. Tenants report books falling from shelves, lamps tipping over, chairs shifting, and personal items appearing in different locations. One resident described waking to find her coffee cup levitating slightly above the counter before falling with a soft clatter. Another reported keys disappearing from a table only to reappear on a nearby shelf hours later. These small but persistent disturbances suggest an active presence capable of interacting with the physical environment, leaving residents both uneasy and fascinated. The origins of the West Loop apartment hauntings are tied to a tragic murder-suicide that occurred decades ago. Historical accounts suggest that a resident took the life of a loved one before ending their own, leaving a profound mark on the building. Paranormal enthusiasts believe that the emotional and violent energy of the event became anchored to the apartments, resulting in restless spirits that continue to manifest. The footsteps, whispers, shadowy figures, chills, and moving objects are thought to be residual energy from that tragedy, replaying fragments of a violent and sorrowful past. Over time, the building may have absorbed additional energy from other misfortunes or untimely deaths, amplifying the haunting and perpetuating its eerie reputation. Paranormal investigators have documented many of the occurrences reported by tenants. Temperature sensors detect sudden drops in specific hallways or rooms. Audio devices capture whispers and footsteps where no living person is present. Video footage occasionally reveals blurred shapes moving through corridors. Investigators also report the sensation of being watched, pressure on the chest, and other physical effects consistent with the presence of unseen entities. These findings often corroborate tenant experiences, lending credibility to the idea that the West Loop apartments are home to lingering spirits. Despite the haunting activity, life continues in the West Loop apartments. Residents learn to coexist with the strange occurrences, leaving lights on at night, keeping doors securely closed, and becoming familiar with areas where activity is most common. Some leave small offerings, such as trinkets or notes, in an effort to acknowledge or appease the lingering spirits. Others simply accept the building's haunted nature as part of its identity, living with a subtle tension that is part fear, part fascination. The West Loop apartment are more than just a place to live. They are a space where history, tragedy, and lingering energy converge. Shadowy figures pacing hallways, whispers echoing in empty corridors, sudden chills, and objects moving inexplicably all point to the presence of unseen residents. Even in the quietest hours of night, the building hums with residual energy, a reminder that the past refuses to be forgotten. Within these walls, the ordinary and the supernatural coexist, and the spirits left by a violent and tragic event decades ago continue to make themselves known through sound, movement, and the chilling sensation of being watched. The Uptown apartments in Chicago rise as a striking example of urban living. Their brick FAA Section A and large windows giving little hint of the dark history contained within. From the outside, the building appears ordinary, even inviting, with well-maintained hallways and a bustling neighborhood surrounding it. Yet for those who dwell inside, the Uptown apartments are far from normal. Over the years, residents and visitors have reported a range of paranormal phenomena, earning the building a reputation as one of Chicago's most haunted residential complexes. Ghostly figures, doors slamming on their own, echoing voices, and cold touches have all been documented, creating an atmosphere of fear and fascination that persists through the decades. Many tenants first experienced the hauntings through sound. One resident described returning home late at night to hear the front door of her apartment bang shut, though she had locked it securely earlier. One resident described returning home late at night to hear the front door of her apartment bang shut, though she had locked it securely earlier. Another tenant recounted waking to the sound of several doors in the hallway rattling and slamming one after another, the noise echoing to the building with a hollow, chilling resonance. These sudden movements are often accompanied by other unexplained phenomena, leaving residents with a pervasive sense of unease. Ghostly figures are a hallmark of the Uptown apartments' hauntings. Tenants frequently report seeing human-shaped silhouettes lingering in hallways, stairwells, or near doorways. One tenant recalled walking down a dimly lit corridor to see a figure standing motionless at the end of the hall, its features indistinct but undeniably human. As she approached, the figure vanished, leaving only a quiet, empty hallway. Others have described fleeting shapes gliding silently through rooms or standing at the edge of vision, disappearing when observed directly. These sightings create a constant sense that unseen presences are moving throughout the building, watching and following those who live there. Echoing voices are another common occurrence. Tenants report hearing murmurs, cries, and whispers that seem to drift through empty corridors. Sometimes the voices are indecipherable, faint murmurs that fade when approached. Other times they are clearer, calling names or repeating words with a tone of urgency or sadness. One resident described hearing a soft, pleading voice echo through the hallway late at night, compelling her to step out and investigate, only to find the corridor empty. These auditory phenomena reinforce the impression of unseen activity, creating a feeling of being observed and reminded that the past lingers just beyond perception. Physical sensations are also reported by tenants, adding to the eerie atmosphere. Many describe sudden chills, unexplained cold spots, or the sensation of cold hands gripping them while asleep or standing alone in an apartment. One resident recounted waking in the night to feel an icy hand resting firmly on her shoulder, leaving her paralyzed with fear for several moments. Another described a sensation of fingers brushing across her arm in a dark hallway, accompanied by a sudden drop in temperature. These encounters, though brief, leave a lasting impression, making the building feel alive with unseen forces. Objects moving on their own is another hallmark of the Uptown apartments of paranormal activity. Books, chairs, lamps, and personal belongings often shift without explanation. One tenant woke to find a chair pulled slightly away from a table, though she had left it perfectly aligned. Another reported a glass falling from the counter and landing upright on the floor, seemingly impossible without intervention. These disturbances suggest a presence capable of interacting with the physical world, reinforcing tenants' awareness that the building is more than it seems. The hauntings are widely believed to stem from a series of tragic deaths in the building's history. Historical records and oral accounts suggest that numerous residents met untimely or violent ends over the decades, leaving behind restless energy. Paranormal enthusiasts theorize that these spirits remain tethered to the building, replaying moments of fear, sorrow, or despair, and manifesting through sound, movement, and physical sensations. The cumulative effect of these events has created a concentrated energy that continues to influence the living, explaining the persistent and varied nature of the hauntings. Paranormal investigators have studied the Uptown apartments extensively, documenting occurrences that align with tenant reports. Temperature sensors often record sudden drops in hallways or rooms where sightings have occurred. Audio equipment captures whispers, footsteps, and indistinct voices in areas where no one is present. Video recordings sometimes reveal blurred figures moving through corridors or lingering near doors. Investigators also frequently report the sensation of being watched, heavy pressure in certain rooms, and sudden cold, intangible touches. Despite the unsettling activity, residents continue to live in the uptown apartments, learning to adapt to the strange environment. Many leave lights on at night, keep doors locked, and avoid certain areas after dark. Some leave small offerings, such as flowers, trinkets, or notes, to acknowledge the spirits believed to linger within the building. Others accept the presence of unseen forces as part of the apartment's identity, coexisting with a haunting that is largely passive but undeniably present. The uptown apartments are more than just a residence. They are a space where tragedy, memory, and lingering energy converge. Ghostly figures drifting through hallways, doors slamming without explanation, voices echoing in empty corridors, cold hands touching the living, and objects moving on their own all serve as reminders that the past refuses to remain buried. Even in the quietest hours of night, the building hums with unseen activity, a subtle yet persistent reminder that the tragic history of the uptown apartments continues to inhabit the present. Within these walls, the ordinary and the supernatural coexist, and the restless spirits of former tenants continue to make themselves known through sight, sound, and sensation, leaving their mark on all who dwell within. And there you have it, Brave Souls, 25 haunted apartments in Illinois that nobody dares to live in, where shadows lurk in the hallways, footsteps echo in empty rooms, and restless spirits linger in every corner. It may not be the wind. It may be a spirit, forever trapped in the place you call home. Thank you for exploring these haunted apartments with me.